Hello fellow homesteaders, I just had some technical difficulties and so I don't know if this is I'm just gonna start all the way over. Hello fellow homesteaders, welcome to Nika's Homestead Talk. Today we're gonna talk about gardening in Arizona. And since I'm gonna start over, I'm just gonna start over and hopefully I cover what I was covering before. So we started off-grid in Montana, and we built up our animals, built up the garden space, and we took all that experience from Montana and brought it down to Arizona. And with Montana versus Arizona and the growing season, it's actually like super crazy. In Montana, we get 3 months of good, solid growing time, and even then the risk of frost or snow and stuff like that is still a worry when it comes to growing in Montana. Even through the good warm growing season, you can still get snow in like the middle of August. Or I think I remember a 4th of July one year we got snow, and that's in the middle, the peak time in a lot of gardens in Montana. So moving down to Arizona and having essentially a year-long growing season was quite a change. Montana, everything just kind of goes to sleep when it comes to winter. There's a certain point, it gets so cold, everything's just done for this season. And here in Arizona, it does get pretty cold and a lot of things get knocked out, but there's always green. Like, it's kind of hard to see in the video, but I've been green all winter, even though we get very frosty mornings. We just got a little bit of snow. It was probably colder when it was frosty than when it snowed. But going from where there's only 3 months of having to tend to a garden, going to almost year-round needing to tend to a garden was quite a change up, especially when it comes to we do our best. We want to catch enough rainwater to sustain us. And so that's the humans, the animals, and the garden. And gardens take tons of water. Between gardens and animals, that can take up to 90% of your water usage. So, Montana, it's only 3 months worth of garden watering that we need to think about. Now that we're in Arizona, it's kind of all year. It's a lot more water. And of course, here in Arizona, it rains, it gets a little bit of snow. There is the natural moisture that can water the garden, but it's also the aspect that Arizona is a lot drier. I wouldn't say hotter than Montana, where we are in Arizona specifically. Kind of the highest highs we dealt with, I think it got to be 103 or 4 one day. So I mean, that's pretty toasty, but Montana gets to be around 100. So, and I think it can get a little hotter than that sometimes in some places, but we're dealing with similar highs, just not for so long during the year. Like Montana, once it's cold, it's just cold. Here, cold is 40 degrees during the day and, mid-teens during the night. So that kind of extends the growing season very far, especially with cool season plants. And if you don't get enough rain or snow or just moisture to sustain those plants, you actually have to water all your plants during the winter. And that's super different for us coming from Montana. Montana just freezes and everything gets watered by the snow in the spring, and it takes the snow a long time to melt. Like, we'll be frozen solid and still be thawing in May. Like, sometimes you can't really plant until the end of May in Montana because the ground is still very cold and frozen. So it's like we get that extra boost of moisture because of the snow in winter, versus here we don't get that kind of accumulation of moisture that melts for a while, saturates the ground, really charges it with water for at least a good time. It'll keep everything wet enough we're not watering it a ton, if that makes sense. Versus here in Arizona, where you always have to input water, because I have green growing plants that they sometimes get too dry that I have to water in December. And so we really have to be strategic with how many garden beds we're building, what plants we are planting, Like some garden beds, I want to plant them and never have to water them. So I'm gonna really have to focus on native plants, just super hardy, drought tolerant plants, to try and ease some of the water stress. But then of course I want to do tomatoes and all the stuff that requires a lot of water. So it's finding a balance between the stuff I want to grow and the stuff that I need to grow in order to balance out our water needs. Because in Arizona you use up just tons more water because the growing season's the whole time. And I found this out I almost killed my rhubarb because I didn't water it through the winter. I think it was our first year, and I was not used to that. I was not used to having to water in the winter. And I think I was transplanting it and I realized it was dying because it was super dry. And so I was like, that was a big lesson for me pretty quick, that even in the winter here, you gotta water your plants. I think I had some comments. Jojo Nope says hello. Hello. How's pals? Is it true that some seeds need to go through a freeze cycle to germinate? Yes, so that is something that is pretty important when it comes to certain plants. I'm not really good at knowing which is which, but many trees, fruit trees, sometimes flowers, some of them don't need it, but they like it. So if they go through that stratification, I'm pretty sure that's the right word, you stratify a seed in the cold, and there's just something in the seed that is triggered and says, oh, okay, so we went through the winter. That's kind of what it is. The cold is telling the seed that we went through winter, and when it starts warming up, that is the spring, and it's safe to germinate. Essentially, is like kind of a basic way to explain what stratification is, because there's some trees like the ponderosa, they actually need to go through a fire. The pine cones need to go through a fire, and those seeds need to know they went through a fire before they will germinate. So some plants actually have very specific needs in order to germinate. Some plants really don't care. Some are right in the middle. They like it if they do get stratified. Some, and they don't mind if they don't. But sometimes you'll get better germination rates if you do make sure they get stratified. So it's kind of just knowing which plant might be a little bit more needy when it comes to that process. There we go. Rachel, good to see you, Rachel. I'm glad you checked out my live. So super jacked to see this growing season for you. I cannot wait to get stuff planted, especially we did go through kind of a warmer winter, so I also had to water stuff a little extra this winter, but we also got lots of moisture, so that was super helpful, and I'm super hoping that because of the wet winter, hopefully we'll kind of keep that moisture train going a little longer than last year. Just so again we can catch more water and everything gets watered in the garden before I actually have to start watering it more, so I guess. But it is super amazing though to be able to, it's not so much that we can grow tons more different types of plants. We're still in this funny transition zone where like we can almost grow tropical stuff, but we're just a little too cold still because we do get snow. And just up the mountain away, they get a lot more snow. So we're right between snowy mountains and kind of the more truer deserty space of Arizona. So we get both of those kind of environmental factors. Some years we're very much the low desert, like virtually, I don't want to say no rain, but so it's the amount of rain is what kind of puts you in the qualification for a desert. And if I remember my numbers correct, I think it's like between 10 and 12 inches of rain, you're kind of more on the desert classification. And then any more of that, you're not quite a desert, but there's kind of this transition area where some years you get as much rain as the desert does. You're getting 10 to 12 inches of rain. And then there's other years where you're getting, 12 to 16 inches of rain. So we kind of fluctuate on both sides of that scale. So it is kind of a trick to find the balance of plants for this type of transitional zone. Because like with our warmer winters, like this winter has been just fabulous. I don't think we've seen single digits. I don't think so. And that's super crazy to me. I'm used to a winter where it's like -20 is your highs for a month or so. So when it comes to here, this winter, we could have grown so many like tropical plants and they could have most likely been okay. They might have had trouble, but we could be more successful with a lot more plants if the winters were more like this winter. Versus last winter, we got definitely a nice stretch of those single digits, and many of the tropical plants that we could grow for a warm winter and survive would have not made it the last winter. And so it makes kind of finding plants a little bit tedious in the sense of we need them to be able to deal with the hot and dry, the possible cold. Like for me, it's not that cold. Like I said, one of the worst winters when we were off grid in Montana was like -70s at night with some wind chill. And like we have animals, so you're out trying to function in that insanity. So being here with it being so much warmer, for one, it's a lot less stressful. You don't have to worry, because even in winter in Montana, I would worry about my perennial plants surviving. And for the most part, they did. Like if you're a perennial plant that can handle, like I'd say -10, usually can handle any colder than that with the varieties we were growing in Montana. But here, the varieties that can handle the cold, can they handle the long, hot, dry of Arizona is kind of the switch, but also the experiment that we have to do. Of course, we want to go with lots of natives, but of course, I like my zucchini and my tomatoes and my melons and, just all the stuff that needs more water that isn't exactly native. And so it's finding the balance between the native stuff that you don't have to water too much. You can kind of ignore them a little bit. And then the stuff that does need more water. And then there's always the stuff in the middle that and it's also production too. With native stuff, like for the desert olive, for example, it's usually just like a bush looking plant here. But if it were to be given a lot more water, it actually turned into more of a tree. So a lot of plants here have just adapted to less water. And if you water them more, they do so much better. So sometimes the argument is why would you want to change a desert landscape? And part of it's because the reason it looks like it is kind of because human interference anyway. So we're just trying to bring things back. But a lot of it is a lot of these plants were once adapted to this area when it was a little wetter, when it was lusher and greener. And then they adapted to it being drier. So if you do give them a lot more water, it's a lot more lush. They're more, they just want to grow a lot more. They'll get a lot bigger, denser. They'll have more fruits. And I'm hoping to kind of showcase that this year with the desert olive because we have tons of them. But there's one that's going to start getting a lot more watering, and it's the only female that we have found so far. So it is like a male-female type of thing. So we want to love up on this native desert olive female and try to get her growing big and healthy so we can take clones and hopefully, plant those females next to males so that we get more seeds and be able to propagate more because these desert olives, for the most part, they're called an elbow tree. So they actually clone themselves, and their branches will bend straight down, and then it'll sense when it starts getting close to the ground, and it'll start growing back up. And as the branch gets heavier as it grows, it'll start squishing into the ground, and it'll root. So they actually create these little thickets. And so we want to do more of the seed spreading of these plants because in a sense it's kind of a monoculture of the desert olives because there's not a lot of females, the one out of a bajillion of them. So we want to try to diversify, get more diversity in genetics with these desert olives, especially because we can graft on eating olives onto these desert olives and we can grow our own olives because we're taking a native plant that can handle the weather. graft on, say, a more delicate olive variety that will hopefully be able to flourish, and then we'd have olives. So that's kind of also the method of what we're trying to do when it comes to growing things out here, is like, are we able to graft what we want to eat onto the native stuff so that we can keep the native stuff doing its thing while also providing us another food source. Especially because with the desert olives, if we watered them more, they got bigger, they'd have bigger fruit, but they're not very tasty. So in that sense, we can eat them, but they're not exactly palatable. So we'd want to graft something we would enjoy more onto them. But then we have the desert olives if we wanted, but we have the olives we want if we want them. Oop, some comments. Oh, I'm not sure how to say that, but it says mysteries, something mysteries, says nice looking place. Thank you very much. Very excited to get this whole garden area planted. Joe Flores says, have you planted any grapes? We have. So when we moved down here, we brought lots of like sticks and bare roots. So we did bring some grapes that we were growing in Montana down here and rooted them out. And then we also had a friend bring us some just sticks of native grapes, and they're in, so hard, this garden on the far end. So we are hoping to keep propagating those grapes and create cool like shade cloth arches for everything so that I don't have to use shade cloth and I can just grow it. So definitely want to do more grapes. Like I want lots of grapes because I love grapes, and they're delicious. So definitely have grapes, and there's a lot more fruit on the list. It's just the slow build. Like a lot of people want us to plant all this stuff, and it's like, depending on the variety of plant, we have to babysit and water those plants until they are established well enough that we don't have to baby them so much anymore. So we're definitely very careful with like, okay, like Brandon, I think he planted a dozen apple trees last year. So there's a dozen apple trees, 2 peach trees, and a couple other trees, and so we're starting small, and starting with those small ones, we're able to clone those as well. We can graft onto those as well. So it's definitely adding certain fruit trees and plants at a time that are perennial like that, like trees. It's definitely the slow buildup of which plants we get and how much water they take. And again, with the grapes, I have to make sure I'm watering them through the winter, otherwise they could dry out and die. So it's a super weird not issue, but it's a super different adaptation compared to Montana. It snows and you're done. And the snow builds up and it's watering everything all winter. And then it thaws out and it's still watering stuff. That doesn't happen here that way. Montana freezes. This place just keeps going and growing, and if it dries out, it can die. And that's more the stuff that's not native, of course. Jojo, nope. I want to move off-grid, but all the prices I see in Arizona is way higher than I thought. Prices have definitely gone up, and I think there's a lot of different factors to that. During when everything was lockdown, yeah, I almost call it shut down, lockdown, whatever the heck that time was around 2020. Prices, like, I'm trying to remember, they like went super up, but then they like plummeted, and that was definitely the time to get in like Arizona land, because 2 years ago, like kind of when the whole situation really settled down, the prices definitely started going back up. Because that's about when we got ours. We got our land here like just when prices were starting to spike back up, and they've just kind of kept going up. But we look at other pieces of land and stuff pretty often, and they are starting to kind of trickle back down. So definitely don't fret too much on price. You could find something good. Don't give up. Keep looking, and definitely try like lots of different like real estate like websites, and definitely like call up some of those places and be like, hey, what properties are available near you? Because depending on who's selling, who knows where you can find it. But I mean, I've seen some pretty good parcels. We're in northern Arizona. We are not in southern Arizona, so we're kind of in the more mountainy areas. And so I don't know, that's the prices in our area. Anyway, they're starting to come down a little bit. I'm not sure about southern Arizona, just to point that out. But don't give up, keep looking. Something could really catch your eye at a good price. Mysteries says native plants can live on the fringe, and that's exactly what we really want, is to have eatable natives just everywhere, but on the fringe, stuff we don't have to think about. I think that's really important for anybody who's gonna start a homestead and growing stuff anywhere. Like, I really understand the desire to, you know, go to the store, buy all the seeds of the regular stuff people grow and have that be your garden. But I highly recommend, like, if you move somewhere and you're in a wooded area, you already have a food forest. That forest is full of food. There's no need to try to plant all these other plants. I mean, of course you can, but I bet you in certain areas, of course, you can go out into the woods out yonder and find yourself a wild apple tree. In my personal opinion, this is my opinion, I think it is much more effective for the environment. The ease of survival and growth in a plant is if it's native. And whether you use the seeds from that apple tree, you take a clone, it's something native. It's something already adapted to the area. It's already has relationships with the native and local fungi and fauna and flora. And then in that sense too, you know, if it's a native apple tree, it has a good root stock that can handle your environment. You can graft all the other flavors of apple you want onto that native tree. Like, I know there is some kind of genetic things that, you know, makes grafting a little tricky in that sense. Like, I'm pretty sure not all apples can be grafted onto each other. But I think that definitely gives people a more variety in what you can do when it comes to blending the conventional aspects of growing with the native aspects of growing, if that makes sense. We can take native plants, you know, that are already adapted to our area, and we can grow them in a fashion that can help boost either their production, or we can add things to them that, say the apple tree isn't a very tasty apple. You can graft on the apples you like. You can make things a little bit more palatable to you with what you're trying to grow without, because it's also the balance. You don't want to be replacing a bunch of the native stuff. In a sense, you know, that's kind of the hardest part when it comes to, say, rehabbing a pretty decimated landscape, is that you want to completely promote all the native stuff. Like, in a sense, that is like what we want to do. Anything that's been living here for this long, we want you to stay, we want you to grow, we want you to flourish. But we also kind of miss this aspect that there's so much that's already been lost that we can never get back. There are species of plants that have been completely taken out of the equation. And some of them we know, and some of them we'll never know. We'll never know that this plant once existed here, and just my personal perspective, humans came in and they tilled and swathed and clear cut and all these things that we lost these plants. So when it comes to us coming back and rehabbing the land, like, I don't want to accidentally plant something that's going to hurt the nature in the sense, you know, that's going to take over and take away more of the native species. But at the same time, like, nature does that naturally. Like, even if, like, humans weren't present spreading stuff all over the place, like, you know, we take, like, the zebra mussel, for example. One time, this boat had this zebra mussel on it, and they didn't flick off that zebra mussel, and then they took the boat into this other body of water, and it dropped in, and now this lake now has all these zebra mussels in it. Like, animals do that too. They pick up seeds, they pick up bugs, they pick up animals, and they spread them all over. And sometimes whatever they dropped becomes a problem in the nature. But nature balances itself out at some point. Sometimes it takes a while and it doesn't look pretty, but I mean, it takes volcanoes to create land. So, you know, sometimes what we see as destruction in the human mind, in nature, it's just kind of the way things go. Sometimes a seed gets put somewhere that's going to imbalance the heck out of stuff, but that's just nature. You know, we have this, like the tide. The tide is this crazy chaotic thing of all this water and all these waves and all the sand and the particles that get shifted and moved. You know, if you look at it on a microscopic scale, you know, you could see that as destruction versus this beautiful, serene scene, if if that kind of makes sense. So it's finding the balance between not wanting to hurt the nature, but nature's gonna do its own thing. It's gonna, as long as we're not doing anything too crazy, it's gonna be able to adapt pretty well to what we do. But of course, we do want to be careful with what we are introducing. But that's also really tricky. Like just for example, if you watch my previous video, I can't remember what I called it, Gardening in Arizona, Do's and Don'ts. The thing about mulch, so when it comes to rehabbing our property, for example, there's like zero organic matter in a lot of places. So what do we need? We need organic matter. Where do we get organic matter? From other places. And it's really hard to take organic matter from one place and bring it to another without seeds and bugs and whatever other stuff may be in there and transferring it to the new place. And of course, there's ways to mitigate the transfer of seeds like that through material, through composting and I guess composting, or, you know, I'm sure there's other processes to make sure you kind of kill seeds and such. Composting, hot composting specifically, is probably the best way to do that. But that is, when it comes to a big old project like this, that's a lot of material. Like to mulch this garden area was probably like 3 or 4 truck beds full of mulch. And the mulch is only like maybe an inch thick. So, you know, when you're talking about mulching 10 acres, not only is that an excruciatingly mad amount of material, but we also don't want to add, we don't want to imbalance the nature by adding too much at one time. So it's a little bit of mulch here and there over time. And that's why Brandon rotates the goats like he does, because that area is going to get the little bit of hay they don't eat. It's going to get their poop and their pee, and they're going to stomp it and mush it in. And it's not a ton of material at once, you know, it's just that thin layer of hay. And that gives the ground a little bit of shade, some delicious nutrients, all that goodness. But it's not going to be extensive enough where, say, we might smother plants. Or some of the plants out here do not like fertility. You give them too much goodness and they're like, oh, I'm dead. You know, and then you have the other plants that like, I need all the fertility. And if it's one tiny bit less than what I need, I'm dead. So it's also that type of balance within the nature is, you know, certain plants, just like some plants don't like wet feet. When it comes to this property, a lot of people don't like the junipers because they think they drink all the water. Well, juniper don't like wet feet. So if we're starting to collect and hold more water in our system, people might think, oh, you're just promoting the juniper. We're actually promoting the decrease in their numbers. Because I see it a lot in Montana. We have the same junipers in Montana, but there's more variety down here in Arizona. But any juniper that I've seen of other varieties, if they get stuck in an extra wet spot, like, I can't remember the name of the little lake, but they dug more space out of this lake and there's these junipers, and those junipers died in like a year because the water came like this much closer to them and it was just too much. So that's kind of part of the process out here, is knowing, okay, if we're soaking in all this water, like what's gonna happen? We're gonna lose some of our junipers because they don't like wet feet. So we wanna replace some trees, replace those trees with some trees that don't mind the wet feet, which would be more of our apples and our peaches. And that's kind of the thing too when it comes to our junipers, is that these junipers are gonna, like, even if they're drinking some water, it's not gonna compare to an apple tree or a fruit tree. These are gonna drink less water, and for a producing apple tree, I should say. So, you know, it's thinking about that too. Like, sure, we want to replace all these juniper trees, but most of the trees we want to replace them with drink more water than the junipers. So it's kind of that aspect too. So we need to slowly change things without like killing everything off. We want, I think it's called, is it silviculture? There's so many terms and coins for different processes of working with an area. But, you know, so we want to take out some trees. We want to replace those trees. We want to promote native trees. It's doing both at the same time while being as aware of how this might affect around us. Because, of course, we want to have more positive impact than negative. And that also comes with Brandon and his earthworks. You know, we get the comment pretty often that, oh, you need a jackhammer or a machine or some dynamite. Even some people, you know, and I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from. But for us, like, to start off with, that's way more destructive. Like, you know, we don't want to cause that kind of chaos in a sense, but it's also not necessary. Like, bigger is not always better. Sometimes more is less, especially when it comes to this process. It's kind of like not biting off more than you can chew. We'd rather start out with shallower basins and swales and see what happens. Because if you dig a big old pit and it never gets full, now you have this funny pit with some sludgy water on the bottom all the time, like that kind of aspect. When it comes to whether it's just building up, goodness, when it comes to building up a homestead, we find that just one little chunk at a time. And sometimes it is kind of bouncing between projects because you get to a point where you can't really work on this project anymore because you need to see what it's going to do. Like, say, a swale. Brandon carves his swale. He doesn't want to do anything to it because he wants the ground to settle. He wants some of the nature to move back in. But he also needs to see what's going to happen when we get a good rain. What's going to happen? Is it going to overflow? All right, so maybe I need to dig it a little deeper. You know, through three rainstorms, it didn't even get close to overfilling. So we know that it doesn't need dug any deeper. And of course, there might be the weird storms where it would overflow. But that's where, for us, you know, if you have shallow pools of water all over the place, that's going to be way more effective than having one big pool of water in one place. So it's almost like, you know, a big pond with tons of little tiny ones. Like, makes me think of like Michigan and Minnesota. Like, there's just little pot bodies of water all over the place, and it's lush, is super lush, and it's crazy. But so it's like creating that on our landscape on like a tiny scale. Lots of places for water to soak that don't have to be very massive. And of course, like I said, we can, but it doesn't mean they're going to hold water. That's kind of the other trick. Even with clay and bentonite clay, like, to make those materials work as a seal for a pond is a lot of work, and it can be a lot of layers, and even then it doesn't always work. You can't think of what to YouTube and search exactly, but we've watched videos of people building ponds with like bentonite clay, and some of them just never hold water. And so using different methods of holding water, catching water, soaking water, you know, there's no right or wrong. It's adapting to your area, to what you need, to what your plants, your animals, what you're trying to do. Some people, when it comes to restoring a landscape, they're just going to fence it off and do nothing. And that's great. I love that aspect of restoration. Just let the nature do its thing. But we as humans, it's also awesome because we are humans, that we can go in there and get that process going a little faster. But sometimes there is that negative effect that, you know, we're human and we mess up. So we might introduce something that we didn't want there before. Or maybe you do dig a hole too deep and you create a funny swampland that is just everything does not like it. And you totally change the ecosystem, you know, like weird things like that. Like, we as humans are great to help the nature, but sometimes we think we know better than nature. And like, not that we do, but we don't. But we can organize things better. Nature just kind of throws out all this material to use, and nature just does what it can. Versus we as humans, like the rocks around here, for example. Nature was like, here are all these rocks. And in some places, they work really good because there's just enough. In some places, there's way too many rocks, so nothing is growing. And then there's places with no rocks where nothing is growing. So we know that the rocks are great, but there can be too many rocks that actually hinder growth. So it's finding all those balances in the nature that you're in. We look at our landscape, what is it doing? We're gonna go into our garden and we're gonna mimic that, but we're gonna just organize it a little better, as well as in the landscape. If there's too many rocks, we're gonna move some. Help the nature recover in that area a little bit faster than it would naturally, because it would take a long time for nature to move all those rocks out of the way. We can do that a little bit quicker and get stuff growing again, if that makes sense. Haven't checked comments in a second. Bigger dog transport. You definitely need the 40 fruit tree. Is that like the tree that has like a ton of different types of fruits on it? I'm not exactly sure what tree that is. Cat ideally camouflaged. Yes, she is, and she's a terror as well. Do you and Brandon do the Earthship Academy? We do not. Have not. We definitely have watched a bajillion videos on all the different Earthship biotecture type of videos, and definitely dove really deep into, what's his name, Michael Reynolds, before we went off grid in Montana and we built our first Earthships. So we've never done that stuff, but we've done and been doing all sorts of different research on that kind of stuff, like the whole time essentially, like, you know, researching on permaculture and gardening and compost and the different practices you can do, whether it's to build things, grow things. We try to absorb as much of that as we can, and of course implement it in all the different ways that we can. Some snowboarder. To find land in AZ, I looked on Zillow for prices and what areas had lower. Then I drove out to Arizona and looked at a list I made and talked to locals and found where they got their land. That's also definitely a really good approach. It can be a little tricky, like, some people are very like, oh yeah, land, here, I'll tell you all the things. And some people are like, no. But it's definitely a good way to do your research, like make lists. And Zillow does seem to be a pretty good spot. I think that's where Brandon looks a lot of the times for land. And it's definitely one of those things out here too, just like if you are looking for land, I'd say one of the biggest things is like sometimes a cheap price is great, but it's also why is it cheap? And make sure you figure that out before you make a final decision, especially, I mean, I don't know if the entire state of Arizona deals with flash floods, but I'm pretty sure it's a big thing just statewide. So there's a lot of flood zones, and like you could look at a property and be like, there's no way that's a flood zone. But if you drive up like a mile or two, you'll see this big crazy wash that like empties out everywhere. And that's might be why the land is so cheap, is because once in a while it super floods everything crazy kind of idea. That's just something that I've heard from people who've bought land out here, is they're like, oh, and I don't know if it's because they didn't look if it was a flood zone in the proper places, or places that haven't been marked a flood zone are a flood zone, if that makes any sense. That's just the biggest thing I've seen when it comes to people buying cheap land in some instances, is that it floods out really bad. So definitely do good observation of like surrounding properties, the geography, where the washes are, those kinds of aspects, just so you don't unknowingly buy a plot of land and, you know, in 2 years after you've built stuff, you get a crazy storm and you get that flooding, and it can be pretty disastrous. So just throwing that aspect out there. Even some people who like parked an RV, it had flooded and ruined their RV. So just throwing that out there. Should have flipped my camera. Okay. Make sure the seller is the deed holder. Someone sold my land and the sheriff knew I was the, ooh, goodness. And my roads are washboards for miles. That's a good point. Definitely when it comes to deeds, make sure you're dealing with the legitimate owner, but also when it comes to buying land, access. And some people, the worse the access is, the better, because people don't want to drive on that. it's going to be far few between just random people coming up that gnarly road. But then also it's really hard on your vehicle. So some people do not want a gnarly road. But like if you're doing the off-grid thing like 9 times out of 10, the road isn't going to be very pretty. Of course, there's some places that have it paved partially, or some places there's locals who work on the road and those kinds of things. So knowing those things is also helpful. Like, does this road get worked on? Because most off-grid, like my area, the county does not, like they're supposed to, but they don't. So make sure you know those things too, because if you go and buy the land and the road is really nice, and then like a year later it's not nice and it's not getting fixed, it could be because just a nice neighbor decided to clean the road and it's not something they do often. So keep those kind of aspects in mind, because roads can be unpredictable when it comes to how long they stay nice, why they are nice. And then of course, you know, thinking like medical stuff too, being off grid and where your land is located. Definitely think about how close you are to like water sources, like wells, like community wells and stuff like that. Because buying land, like a lot of people want to go and punch a well on their property, and it's like $1 million. Not literally, but it can be like around 50 to 100 grand, depending on the situation, depending on the rock they have to punch through, how many holes they have to punch. Like, there's someone off yonder from us, they had to punch like 6 holes that were like really deep holes, and they hit some water, but it was like really mucky, not very good water. And so they have a well with not good water that they spent like a bunch of money on. So that's definitely something to think about when it comes to buying land. Is there a well? Of course, that'll make the property more expensive, but washes can also be a benefit. You have to kind of look at what the rules say in your area, but as I understand it, as we understand it, is that you can't block and dam a wash, but you can divert some water. Like I said, check your local places and things, but when it comes to having a wash on your property, that can actually really be beneficial when it comes to water. Like, it's not really my favorite thing because that water comes from super far away and it's washing who knows what all together, and it coalesces into the washes. So in a way, it's not my favorite thing, but also it's water and we need to capture and hold as much water as we can, planetarily almost at this point, because a lot of our water is nasty. But definitely think about those things too, like water when it comes to your property. Where are you gonna get it? You're gonna punch a well, you're gonna haul it, you can do rainwater catch, those kinds of things. And then as well as just how close you are to town, especially if you have health issues, if you have kids, you know. I know some people get excited, like just stories that I've heard over my years of off-gridding. Some people will buy a property that, oh, it's beautiful, it's perfect. They buy it, they drive out to it, and it's like super far away from anything. And they're like, and it's a big stress on them, especially when it comes to someone who's not used to essentially being able to kind of walk across the street to a grocery store, or it's just a few blocks to an urgent care type of aspect. And when you're not used to being so far away from things, it can be very daunting. So definitely kind of know your comfortability when it comes to how far you are away from your creature comforts and amenities that you may need. And not only just for emergencies, but it's also having to plan, like for us, if we make a trip to town, we're making a trip to town. It's not just for milk. Like, we go to get the animal feed and the hay and the grocery store shopping, and, you know, stop by the gas station for the whatever chocolate bar, you know, just everything we need to do one time. Because if you're halfway home, you're not turning around to forget to go grab the one thing that you forgot. So it's also making sure that because like everybody's different too. Some people have jobs when they're off grid, so they'll drive an hour to and from work. So when it comes to certain things, you know, they'll just stop by the grocery store on their way home from work or pick up animal feed on the way back. But, you know, those are just very important things to think about, and how you will balance them out especially if you're trying to build from the bottom up, from like raw land up. It takes a lot of time, and especially if you're working a regular job, it can take a lot more time, unless you make some like really good money and you can hire lots of people. But we kind of try to showcase things as in what one or two people can do without your kind of 9 to 5. Like we've sacrificed a lot, and we kind of go without. I don't mean that in a negative way, I actually mean that in a very positive way. To be able to slowly build up without having to work that 9 to 5. Of course, like the YouTube and the work we do, and I sell eggs and sell chicks and those kinds of aspects. But it causes the buildup to be much slower. But we get to be here all the time. We get to observe and hang out and love our property. So for us, it's a very fabulous trade. Like, I would live in a tent all the time, forever, if I didn't have to work a 9 to 5 kind of idea. Like being able to just do your own thing, hang out on your own property, make the little bit of money you need to keep things going and growing. And the more things go and grow, the more they go and grow, and hopefully slowly we'll build up to a more sustainable point where we just have to pay for our phones and gas money. You know, like that is the main goal. I really hope one day to at least be able to feed us. Like, if I can't get to the point where I'm making clothes and soap and all the other things that I would love to be able to do for us, if I can feed us with the garden and the animals and the chickens, and that would be fabulous. And for me, I think the only way to really be able to do that in a healthy manner, like I couldn't handle doing this homestead off grid thing on top of a 9 to 5. We did that in Montana, kind of on and off when we needed to, and it's exhausting. It's near impossible when it comes to the regular 9 to 5 type of job. We would work other side hustles, work on other farms, work with other people, and it's, you know, that type of stuff is more closer to what we're doing. So it's not like extra work, you know, it's the do what you love thing. And I do not love working the kind of the regular jobs. So it's definitely a development and an adaptation and practice to figure out kind of the work, money, life, build the homestead type of balance. And it can take a while. It's a hard acclimation. And like I say that from our experience and from like in Montana, there's lots of new families coming in and starting their off-grid journey, and we worked with them and helped them in tips and tricks. And the biggest thing is just acclimating to everything not being just flick on the light. I mean, you can have that in a general sense, but you're still on solar. You have to remember to you actually have to remember to turn that light off, because you might actually like run out of juice. You know, like a lot of homesteads have different ways to heat their water, but a lot of people that we knew, they started out with no hot water. You know, how long are you able to deal with boiling water for your shower? How long are you able to deal with doing everything camping style, I guess is how I see it. Like when you start from nothing on a property and you're slowly building it up and you're living there, it's like camping. You know, even if you're not there all the time, you're there for like weekends and stuff. It's like a camping lifestyle as you build everything up to where it slowly becomes less camping. Like over time, you get those little upgrades. Like in Montana, when we got like a legitimate shower, that was the coolest upgrade in the universe. And so, you know, it's not only adapting with the nature and to the nature, but it's also sometimes you almost have to like rewrite your human in the city habits, kind of, because like in the morning, if you wake up like, oh, I have to run into town and do this, and this, you can't really do that off grid. You wake up and you're like, okay, so this, and this needs done the next time I go to town. And when your list is long enough to make it worth going to town, like, and in the sense, like, it's hard to acclimate, because like when we started going off grid, I'd be like, oh, can we like run to town really quick and pick this up? And then it's like this whole day excursion that's just lost the whole day for one thing. And that was a funny acclimation to make. That's like, okay, we cannot be running to town all the time. It's a waste of gas. It's a waste of time. We need to have a fat list of things in town we need to do before we go into town. And it can be tricky because you have to remember all the things you need. And of course it's the list, bring your list. I forget the list half the time, so it's on my phone sometimes. But those kinds of ideas when it comes to, acclimating to being off grid. And it's especially the thing if you're trying to homestead off grid. So this is a really big thing. I don't know if I want to call it a misconception, but I think it kind of might be. There's off grid, where you're just off the grid. It's a cabin in the woods that's off grid. But then you're off grid as in homesteading, as in you're trying to grow the food, you're trying to raise the animals, you're trying to do all those things and being off grid. And then there's just and then there's on grid homesteading, I should say. And when it comes to on grid homesteading and off grid homesteading, those are very separate worlds. And not in the sense that one is any harder than the other, by a margin. I personally think that when you're off-grid homesteading, it's a lot harder because you're not on the grid. The electric is all on you. The water is all on you. It's nice if you have the well, of course. We're doing the rainwater harvesting, so we did it to ourselves a little bit. But, when you're off-grid homesteading, and say like me, I'm incubating eggs, I have to make sure that we're getting the solar, that the solar stays all good to make babies and to have those chicks. I have to really super worry about that, sort of, all the time. Because if we get 2, 3, 4 cloudy days in the middle of a hatch, I could be in trouble with that hatch. And of course, that means, maybe we need a bigger solar setup and those kinds of things. But like I said, slow buildup. Things cost a lot of money. Sometimes things just happen. But if you're on the grid in homesteading, like unless there's a giant storm that knocks out the power, of course, you don't have to worry about losing power to your incubator. You don't have to think about that at all, really. And like, a lot of states, they deal with, it doesn't matter if you breed your animals to have babies in the fall or the spring. Either way, it's cold. And something you deal with is having cold babies. Well, if you're off grid, it's harder. You can't just turn on the tap water and have warm water to warm up a baby. Depending on the system. You can have specific systems that can give you very quick hot water, but sometimes it takes the buildup and the money for that. And so you have to boil the water before you can warm the baby. And those are just like the examples of what, not that it's harder. Homesteading is just hard. It's fun and rewarding, but it sucks and it's hard. I see people get more frustrated with homesteading when they're off grid versus when they're on the grid. Because when you're on the grid, you can, if you're in Arizona trying to grow a big old garden, I'm sure there's certain water restrictions and stuff like that. But just for the sake of saying, and you have a hose, you could flood your yard and water everything and you're good to go. If you're on grid, okay, am I gonna haul all this water? Am I gonna drain my rain catchment? Do I want to use my well that much to flood the yard and water the garden? And that's kind of the thing with a well as well. One of the reasons we do rain catch and we'd love a well. It'd be great. It would be super amazing to have a well, but we don't have all the Skrilla. So the other issue with a well is that wells run dry. The county could come in and cut some crazy water restriction because water, and they could say you can't use this well anymore, and they chop it off. They chop off a little well tube thing and say no more. Not that, I don't know if they'd actually do that. But an example, what if the government tried to come in and say you can't use this anymore? And in a sense, worried about repercussions, we probably wouldn't use it anymore. Just that kind of idea. But like I said, what if it went dry? What if the world went to poop and it broke and you couldn't replace it and you can't fix your well? And just those different aspects of what happens if that well is something we can no longer use for water. What are you going to do then? And for us, rainwater. Even in a desert, it will rain. You just need enough hold ability and catchment to catch enough to last you long enough until the next rain. So that is why a well is not a huge thing for us. Is, I guess in a sense, we're trying not to rely on too many man-made things, like a well. A well is a man-made thing that could go bad and not be useful in the future. But if we dig enough rain catchment and we slowly build the system appropriately, we will hopefully just always have pockets of water all over the place and be able to sustain us. And if we did have a well, or if we get a well one day, that would be for supplemental or kind of emergency kind of aspect. You know, like, oh, it's been a really dry year, let's top off a couple of these ponds. And that would be more of how we would use a well versus it being our main source of water. Because like I said, a well can run dry. And say we did punch a well, it could be that we just punched into this little pocket of water that's only going to last us a couple of years. You know, there's also those kinds of ideas. And to me, it's also the more people that move into an area and punch a well, the less water available for as long. So it's almost like trying to create a backup. Okay, we haul water, which maybe one day that's not going to be available, whether it's because gas is $1 million or vehicles no longer work, whatever the situation is. So we can't rely on hauling water all the way. Like, we can rely on it for now, but you know, who knows what's gonna happen in anytime soon. Who knows what's gonna happen? So we can't really completely rely on hauling water. A well, all the things I said about a well, so we can't completely rely on that. And rain catchment. Like, there's only a few places on this earth that it literally never rains. So in a general sense, we can hope it will always rain. So we want to do as much as we can to catch the rain because we feel that that's the most reliant source of water when it comes to the chaoticness of this world. In that general sense. That was quite the ramble. Comments. Raven Rock just stopped by to say hello. Hello. Sorry it had been a minute since I read comments. Some snowboarder. My area has free-range cows, and I'm working on a walled patio to keep them out and then fence. I can see Burger King from my place. It's at the truck stop. It's 9 miles away. Like camping in the wild, not at a campsite with a nice bathroom and some cleaners. Yep. And someone cleans. Now that's pretty much yeah, what it is. And I love it. I love it. Like, we were in the tent for a while, like a year and some, and it's a little rough, but I still loved it the whole time. Like, it's super great. And yeah, we also deal with free range cows. We dealt with it in Montana too, and without trying to throw too much shade, I guess, the way they manage their cows down here compared to Montana, because I grew up working with cows and like working on a ranch and stuff, so I'm actually decent familiar with cow management and such. Not like I'm a pro expert or rancher or nothing, but like I said, but the way they manage the cows down here in Arizona compared to Montana just blows me away. I do not like the management down here whatsoever, like, not at all. But we understand the free range cow issue, and we're starting off with a dead hedge, and then hopefully one day money will be able to fence everything off too. But for now, it's kind of the dogs that help keep stuff away. We chase them off because they are the most damaging thing, because people don't realize that, like, when it comes to like native animals to an area, their feet are like kind of specifically adapted to their natural environments, and cows are so destructive in this environment. It'll rain a little bit and they'll walk across the field and just tear everything to shreds. I mean, like Montana, they're damaging in that environment, but here they are, I mean, it is super bad. It bothers me a lot. But hopefully slowly as a world, we'll get better at managing our critters. I think I saw another couple comments. She's right about a backup well. Talk about, yep, always backup. And if we had a well, we don't want some backups of the components too. But like, for everything you can think of, at least one backup, but a second is always super helpful. Journey with Cindy. Hey girl, just had 3 wild burros walk through my place. I'm so jealous. We hear them sometimes, and I have yet to see them. We hear them over this way, but I have a friend who lives over that way. And they go and walk up to her fence and hey, what's up? And I'm like, why don't you come and see us? But it could be that we've barricaded things a little bit, and they're like, oh, They don't want us here, but I think it's super cool that they're around. I super enjoy like Montana is very diverse, but it's diverse for like 3 months out of the year, and then it's snow covered. and and here, like, there's just so many amazing animals. Like there are, so it's like it's a couple properties over yonder, another friend. They have the little ringtail cat. Oh no, what are they called? Uh Coatimundis, I think is what they're called. But they're like these funny, they remind me of King Julian off the movie Madagascar, but like Arizona style. But like there's all these adorable little critters, and like these jackrabbits out here are huge, and like the antelope out here are beautiful. Like Montana has a lot of hunting tourism. Like I know Arizona does too, but like the hunting regulations down here, I love it. I love it because I see, dude, these are some of the most beautiful game animals I ever did see. I mean, some of the places in Montana, there's some specific places where they are prettier than here, but just kind of your local regular wildlife, you know, in Montana, they're a little scruffy, little scruffy. I can see that the gene pool maybe have been depleted a little bit, if you catch my drift. But down here, man, I see trophy critters all day long. I mean, just vibrant and shiny. Like, this may sound odd to some people, but like their big old white butts, depending on their brightness of the white on their bodies, whether it's their butt or their belly, it's just shiny and bright and beautiful and like beautiful. I love the hunting regulations down here because I can see the health of all of these animals due to those regulations that I don't see in Montana as much. And of course it could be because, you know, Montana has some tough winters and stuff, but I just love the way they regulate hunting down here. I love it because I'm all for hunting, good regulated hunting. Journey with Cindy, the fourth mountain lion that came through. I'll send him your way. You could send him my way. I'll say hi and then shoo them right along. We did have a mountain lion come through. Ooh, it's kind of the beginning of 2024. So it's been a minute, but we did have one come through, but we more have an issue with a bobcat. I see him every now and again, and I know he's the cause of the loss of some of the farm critters. And it sucks because I don't really want to do anything about it, but I do want to do something about it. But essentially, we just need an appropriate livestock guardian dog. Because if you're kind of new and you haven't heard before, we have our 2 dogs, and they're very good boys. They're very good boys. But we had some other, this was in Montana, but there's these people with all these freaking dogs that just did whatever they want, and they came over to our place and killed a bunch of chickens, and our dogs kind of like ended up joining in. Like first they were like playing with these dogs, and then the dogs started killing the chickens, and then our dogs started. And our dogs were like raised in the coop with our chickens and our goats, so they were great guard dogs until that craziness happened. So we can't let them just run about the property to keep stuff away. So, and in a sense, like I mean this in a loving way and not like trying to sound mean or anything, but we are waiting for them to age out a little bit more before getting, like, I want like a Pyrenees. And we have a friend who has like, I mean, just a wicked bloodline. And they'll take out coyotes and all that good stuff. And he knows, I like his, how he raises the pups to be prepared to take over on someone else's property. I really love how he does that. So I'm hoping one day, you know, our boys are 10, so once they decide that they don't want to bark at stuff anymore, you know, we'll retire them out and bring them, well, we can't bring them a puppy or puppies because we don't want our new dogs to learn bad habits from them. So that's kind of where we have to be a little bit careful. But otherwise our dogs do super good. They have these big old zip lines. And so it's really nice, you know, they can run a nice space and keep stuff away. So whenever I move the chickens, the dogs move too. So like I can move the chickens maybe twice before I have to swap the zip line over. So they're able to protect the birds without being able to get to the birds. So it's definitely kind of an acclimation. And that's another acclimation when it comes to like Arizona, kind of getting back to the gardening aspect a little bit, is animals are really great, cats and dogs, at protecting your garden and stuff like that, but they can also be the biggest pain in the butt. Especially with the cats, it's not so much pooping and peeing in the garden beds, is that when they're green and lush and I'm watering them, they want to lay in the garden beds. So they'll crush all of my plants. But I kind of deal with that because they take care of the rodents. When we first got here, it was really nasty how many pack rats and mice were here. Like, that to me was one of the first signs that this environment has been totally just sent askew, because there's not enough predators here to deal with the mice. And something else we noticed is the mice and the pack rats, they get to all the seeds. Like when all the plants go to seed, the mice and the pack rats collect all those seeds and take them back to their nest and eat them before they ever have a chance to sprout. So that's one of the problems out here when it comes to trying to recover a landscape, is that if you have too many rodents eating all the seeds, there's not going to be seeds to help recover the landscape. So it's really nice because our dogs do it also. They will, you know, if they can, they'll catch themselves a rabbit or a mouse and stuff like that. But these cats came through, and I mean, the first month we were here, they were bringing back like 2, 3, 4 pack rats and a couple mice a night. Like, it was super crazy. But since then, we have noticed there's more seedlings of certain things that's like, which one is it? It's the biscuit root out here. That the mice would take those. There'd never be seeds. Like, as soon as they were dry enough, the mice would take them all. And since the cats have been here and kind of dealt with that, we see a lot more of the biscuit root, because the seeds actually get a chance to be planted and sprout. So it's kind of that thing when it comes to predators and our animals, is that we need more predators. Like, we actually need more owls and foxes, and like, I don't like them coyotes, because wily coyotes, but we need more of those, because that's the reason the bunnies are so bad. That's the reason the rats and the mice are so bad. So I'm really against taking out predators unless it's like super necessary. If I'm like walking in on a coyote eating a bunch of my chickens, I'm probably gonna have myself a fur, you know, but otherwise it's just scaring them off. But since the dogs kind of follow everyone around, we don't really have to worry about the coyotes and that kind of aspect. But, you know, this landscape and this area is just so out of whack that, you know, once one thing, it's just like anything else in the food chain, you know, growing up biology, if you took out krill in the ocean and you took it out, it just vanished one day, the whole ecosystem would collapse. You know, it's the same on land. You can take out one predator and have a whole host of issues that continually degrade the landscape and the fauna and the flora. And we're trying to, it's not exactly undoing it, because we can't undo what has been done, but we're trying to at least help it recover. It's never going to be the way it was, but that's how nature is. You know, a hurricane comes through and wipes out an island. That island has to start all the way over. It's just, it so happens that we humans are the hurricane, and we're trying to clean up our mess, and kind of that idea. And that's kind of how we are trying to do our gardening, is we're not trying to come in and take over and grow just what we want, because is that not how we grow the majority of our food? We go, oh, we want to grow a bunch of soybeans. You wipe out a ton of native wildlife landscape. You displace hundreds, if not thousands of millions of animals. You annihilate any fauna and fauna. Or is it the flora? You wipe out all the animals and the plants, and then you dig up the soil and you tear it all up to plant one thing. And we don't want to do that. We want lots of diversity between what is natural and native, and with things that, like I said, we're not trying to replace what was here, but we do need to replace the things that were lost. You know, like I said, if you take one thing out of the food chain, everything goes screwy. And if that one thing, the exact thing, can't be put back, we can try to put the best replacement back that we can. There still might be some chaos, but it's better than not having it at all. It's kind of like the cats and the mice. Like, sure, I'm really lucky. Our cats really don't they'll play with the lizards, but they don't really kill the lizards. They really don't go after the birds very much. It's more of a once in a while thing. There's still plenty of mice and stuff for them to go after. But that is kind of one of the issues with cats, is they do take out kind of everything. They just like to hunt everything. But I'd rather work with them to deal with the mice than just trying to figure out how I deal with these mice. So it's not a perfect, cats are not a perfect replacement for, say, the foxes and the bobcats and the owls and the other birds of prey that would take out those mice. They're not, definitely not the perfect fix, but they're the best one that we can bring in, and we can control them a little better too, you know, if like, oh, these cats are, I mean, it's kind of hard, the cats are eating all the birds, but I'm lucky that our cats don't do that. But also, you know, we don't want birds in the garden. So, because I don't want them eating my seeds, I don't want them eating my plants. So to a degree, if they're protecting my garden space from birds, the birds are gonna learn to not come into the garden space. And like I said, you know, it's not a perfect replacement. Cats are not, they're a pain in the butt, like totally. But, you know, that's one way we've kind of replaced something within our little bubble. Too many mice, we need something to eat these mice, cats. And it's kind of the same in the landscape. You know, of course we want to do lots of native grasses and promote, like we're always walking around and pulling off the grass seeds, because like since we've started rotating the goats and the goats have given everything a haircut, everything was like, heck yes, and it grew and it seeded. So we run around and we harvest those native grass seeds, we sprinkle them around, we sprinkle them in the garden. So we're promoting nature and all the native stuff, but like, hey, so I'm trying to think of a grass, like I guess a wheat or a ryegrass. We want that because we can eat it, our animals can eat it, the wildlife can eat it. So we want to promote maybe some of that wheat and the rye and all those different types of grasses, so we can create more diversity, because I can't imagine how many different types of grass we've lost, like that will no longer, they just don't exist anymore because they've been wiped out due to whether it's nature caused, animal caused, human caused, whatever. We've lost a lot of grasses. We need to put something in their place. We got wheat, we got rye, you got, I mean, if you're in a tropical enough place, you could grow bananas, right? They're not a grass. Or sugar cane maybe, I don't know, something. You can grow whatever different kinds of grass if it can grow in your area to maybe replace grasses that have been lost. And it's same thing with, like, you know, say a legume. There were native legumes. There's lots of them here. Like, you got the mesquite, you got the cat claw, you got the rush pea. Oh, there's like 20 different types of legume-like plants here. But I bet with, even though there's so many, I bet we lost a few. So maybe we'll find a specific legume that, you know, we can do something with, and we'll add that into the system. And then the rush peas, them being a native legume, I'm always, whenever there's tons of the seed pods, I collect them all and I sprinkle them around and I sprinkle them into the garden, because not only are they edible, but they're native. And so it's doing both at the same time. And there's so many different terms. I kind of said this earlier, but you have your, you know, the different practices and stuff. You have your horticulture, your polyculture, syntropic forestry agriculture. You have your this culture and this forestry practice, and you can do this and you can do this. And to me, like, it's all the same. They're just different methods of doing, like, kind of the same thing, sort of. But at the same time, it's just doing what nature is doing. Like, if you think about it, like, nature does hugelkultur mounds. Like, it might take a while to build the bed or for that log to become buried, but nature does those things. You know, like, if you think about it, nature does hydroponics in certain ways. Certain plants that live in extremely sandy soil that's super draining, like that's almost hydroponics. You know, aquaponics when it comes to lilies in a pond. When it comes to, I think the syntropic silviculture? There's too many, I can't remember, but the one practice where you take out a tree and you plant a different tree and you slowly replace things. You know, nature does that too. Just like I was saying with the juniper, if this landscape gets too wet, the juniper are gonna start to die off, and any plant that likes more of that moisture is gonna start to replace that tree. You know, a lot of our practices are the same thing nature does. It's just we as humans can do it a lot faster and kind of more efficiently, because like nature just does it at random, you know, depending on what the environment does or what the weather brings, that kind of aspect. But that's where, you know, all of our practices, it's mimicking nature. I mean, even earthworks is essentially mimicking nature. You know, nature creates potholes and divots and swale-like features and terraces, and of course ponds and those kinds of things. So, you know, all these different practices when it comes to just the entire umbrella of growing, gardening, organic stuff, it's just like, what is nature doing? What does nature do? Like that's gonna be my new term. Someone asked, well, what would you do with this garden? Well, what would nature do? What would nature do with this garden? What would happen if like nature took over? You know, and because like here in Arizona, you know, like the rock comparison, you know, there's tons of rocks out here, and rocks out here show that it's super important to have good mulch, but not too much mulch, and that rocks do make a very good mulch. So we want to use that like nature's example of rocks and use rocks as mulch, but just not so thick, maybe not so big or not so many. You know, we want to cater it a little bit to what we're trying to accomplish. And I feel that goes to any practice, because if you watched my last live, I did the little hugelkultur sunken in pit. And that's because we're too dry in Arizona. We're too dry for the mounded hugelkultur practice. It does not work. I mean, I don't want to say it does not work here. If you were able to water it a lot and often, it could work pretty good. But if you can't do that, it's going to be something that's probably going to be pretty tricky to keep wet enough to be as effective as it could be. So we adapt that practice and we sink the hugelkultur mound into the ground. So we just bury the wood in ground and create kind of a concave instead. So instead of the garden bed coming up, it kind of comes down. And that's how we'd adapt that practice. And like, same thing with raised garden beds. It's same thing as the hugelkultur mound. Because our raised garden beds, something I didn't mention in my raised beds suck video, is that the only reason these are raised garden beds is because we couldn't dig down. So we decided to just build them up, and it made for a good experiment anyway. But you know, a lot of people just like raised garden beds. They're very pretty and festive, and they have this specific ambiance or something, I don't know. But just because you like them doesn't mean it's going to work. Just because you like how that idea sounds doesn't mean it's going to be effective. Just because it works in this place doesn't mean it's going to work in the next place. And sometimes that could be it's just a little too hot here, or it's a little too cold here, or maybe the elevation is just different enough that these practices aren't going to be, it's just not going to be as effective in your area, or it's going to be more effective in your area than another. And that can even be within your landscape, just itself. You could have some areas that are super sandy and loamy that are going to be perfect for one thing. But then you go across the property, I mean, that's pretty much our property. You come across the other way and it's just incredibly rocky. So like the sandy, loamy place where there's like nothing, that's great for earthworks. Where there's all the rocks, you maybe move some rocks, but it's, what are you gonna do? You can't dig with all these rocks. So even certain practices and things can have to differ between your landscape versus, you know, being states away. But like coming from a different state into a new state and begin the garden experimenting journey over was just super intriguing. Like, especially down here, like I said, it's super diverse. There's so much here to learn and identify and figure out like what I want to promote within my garden space and what stuff that I'm like, I don't want this in my garden space. Like for example, there's this little poisonous bluebell flower. I do not want it in my garden space. If I see it, it's getting pulled and burned. Not like literally burned, but no. We are not promoting that in the garden. Out there, oh heck yeah. If I see some seeds of that little flower popping, I'm gonna sprinkle and I will promote it over yonder. But being able to identify things within the landscape that I can promote within this garden bed, I feel also helps create kind of the relationship between the plants you're trying to grow and the native stuff. Because like, I mean, if you're kind of into the kind of stuff where it comes to like mycelium and fungi and how they communicate with each other, but also communicate with plants. Because like mycelium, you know, it's this whole network of little mushroom, it's not actual mushroom, but it's the mycelium fungus fingers throughout the ground. You know, it could be touching this tree over here, and this tree is like, oh, hey, I need some copper, just something. It needs some nutrient. And that mycelium is going to send it through its fingers, and it's going to bring some copper, and it's going to bring it to that tree. It's like not quite literally like that, but almost in that general sense, you know. And I feel like between planting more domesticated plant varieties and planting the native varieties within my garden bed will hopefully cultivate a really good relationship between the native stuff here, the stuff I'm trying to grow, because anything I'm growing in these beds, I'm getting seeds from. And so cultivating that relationship within my own vegetable cultivar, I guess. So like my zucchini, you know, once I breed the zucchini a couple times out here, it's kind of my own zucchini a little bit, you know. It's a little bit more adapted to Arizona. Excuse me. And that goes for tomatoes too. You know, the longer you grow it in an area, and whether you're crossbreeding or breeding it to itself, so you keep that, you know, if it's a pink fang tomato, you keep it with a pink fang so it stays like a pink fang and doesn't start morphing into another tomato. But the longer that you collect seeds from what you're growing, you know, those seeds are gonna start off having a better relationship with the native stuff here. So cultivating relationships not only between us and the plants we're growing, whether they're native or what we're eating, but it's also cultivating relationships between the plants we are growing and the soil we are cultivating. Because out here we kind of have this funny balance. We have very limey soil, and then we have all these junipers. And it's not like a huge issue so far, but the lime makes our soil very alkaline. And then the junipers kind of give it a little bit more of this acidicness, but it's kind of nice because they kind of balance each other out. You got your kind of alkaline, kind of acidic stuff, and they mix together, and these garden beds do great. Like, it's a mix of juniper debris and all the stuff from under a juniper and the lime soil. And they balanced each other out and did pretty good. A couple plants weren't super happy, but some plants are a little bit picky. And it's definitely finding that balance between what's available to you on the property and what you can kind of grow in it, because we don't want to bring in a ton of external material. It's like no matter what we do, we need to. There is a lack here, a lack of organic material, a lack of plants, in the sense of if this were to be a healthy, flourishing system. But we still want to not bring tons of material in. So no, we really don't want to haul in a bunch of clay. There's some clay here that we can work with, but it's a lot of time, money, effort, gas. You want to talk about carbon emissions and all that kind of stuff. I don't like the idea of taking a bunch of dirt from one place and bringing it somewhere else. I don't know what's in that dirt. Seeds? Did someone spill oil up in that dirt? Was it around someone's septic tank at one point? You know, just things like that kind of also push me away from bringing in loads of material like that. Like even these wood chips, I'm not a fan. There's a lot of plastic in it, just weird debris. Who knows who sprayed what on that mulch, because it comes from 50 yards and probably half of them have people come and spray for weeds and whatever pesticides. So a lot of stuff that we bring in, we could be bringing in other stuff we don't want, like I was saying earlier, but that doesn't, beyond just seeds. You know, we could be bringing in plastic and chemicals, and we want to avoid that as much as we can by bringing in as little as we can. And again, with Brandon's rotational grazing and the hay, for us, that's the easiest way to mulch the whole property, is rotationally graze the goats. Because, you know, hopefully when they say this is good clean hay, it's not sprayed with anything, hopefully they're telling the truth, and so our goats are getting good hay, and we're slowly sprinkling hay around the whole property as they get rotated. So that's one trip needed for a whole bunch of hay, and you get way more coverage with that hay than with the mulch. Like, this was a ton of mulch, versus if I had a hay bale or two or even a straw bale, I could have done double, triple the mulch that I was able to do out here. So there's also kind of the balancing of what resources you're going to bring in, how you're going to utilize them, how much work, money, time, etc., it takes to bring in those resources. And of course, depending on where you live, like, you know, kind of for us, we could just like mulch all the trees that we chop. But at the same time, this is juniper. Juniper takes a billion years to like really break down. So as a mulch, I mean, it would be a good mulch, but it's not going to be the mulch that would really get going and activating and breaking down and being super awesome very fast. So in reality, we don't want to mulch up all our juniper trees. Like, that's just silly, because it's going to be just dry sticks in the ground for a really long time. So it does make sense to bring in kind of outside mulch that has more pine and more just a easier wood to break down and really begin that breakdown mulch mycelium awesome process. But then you think of the hay. The hay does that process faster and better, and it's a lot less work, it's a lot less time driving. It's one trip for hay, and that hay feeds the goats, it mulches. It's kind of a pro-con, but we get the seeds from that hay, and so we get 3 things out of one thing. One trip to town for one big load of hay, and we get 3 super awesome benefits. Well, one is kind of, you know, the seeds. It's a super awesome benefit, but you also might get stuff you don't want. But at the same time, that comes from a field that had to be watered a lot. And if we're not watering a lot, hopefully that means it'll suppress some of the stuff we may not want, because we're not watering the field for this stuff to grow. But let's check some comments. I'm a little behind. Journey with Cindy, Akbash, or an Anatolian. I'm really torn, but they're very expensive and they're kind of hard to find when the last time I looked. So it's my dream pair of livestock guardian dogs is an Akbash and an Anatolian. That is my dream, but I will go for a badass Pyrenees too, because they're big and fluffy, and I mean, I guess they kind of all are, but what's up with the tripod going vertical? Are you saying it's changing on your side? Because I usually am vertical, but I kind of felt like horizontal today. It kind of just depends on the day. So jealous, sitting here waiting for a blizzard. We got our blizzard the other day. We got like this much of snow. I was very excited. I haven't seen snow in like a year. I was starting to really miss it, but I'm glad I don't have to wait and deal with blizzards anymore. Like, it's having no winter comparatively. Like, if you live in Arizona winters is winter. For us, it's spring, man. All winter in Arizona is our spring, and I love it. It's fabulous. And I'm sorry to anybody who has to deal with that snow. Part of me wants to tell you to move to Arizona, but at the same time, don't. But at the same time, do. But everybody's moving everywhere, and everywhere is getting filled too. So that's just another thing. If you're moving somewhere, and a lot of people are starting to move there, just know that more people are gonna move there. Just warning you. That happened when we were off-grid in Montana, and we're part of that down here in Arizona. So I'm equally guilty. Journey with Cindy says, Nika, talking about your environment being so rocky and sandy, I have a delicate thing to ask. What do you do with your animals that have expired? I have a hard time digging. So it kind of depends on the situation. We're not like too rocky that we can't bury an animal. We had one pass away. He was oh man, his name was Elvis. But he passed away, and there's certain places we probably couldn't dig, but we do have plenty of like sandy, loamy spots that we're able to dig and bury our animals. And if we weren't able to, I'd do, what do you call them, a rock pyre? Like, what like Vikings or whatever do, and they just stack rocks and they bury someone with rocks. That's what I would do if we weren't able to. Sorry, my allergies are killing me. Because like in Montana, that was kind of a problem, except it was because everything was too frozen to bury an animal. So we would actually compost them because we'd always have big old compost piles. So that's also another option we have utilized out here. Just because it was kind of efficient. We had someone, this was way in the beginning, but someone brought us a huge load of manure, and we had a goat pass away, just kind of a freak accident kind of ordeal. And we put her in the compost, and I'd say, and it's like a hot compost situation too, but I mean like 2 weeks, and she was virtually, maybe 3 weeks, but she was virtually broke down and gone. So kind of depends on what you have available and kind of the situation. But you know, if it's too rocky, like burning is not really the best method. I do know some people out here who do it that way. But like rock pyres or compost, if it's too rocky, that's just what I would recommend. Because compost works really well. I don't think I ever thought of it as being stinky or anything like that if you're worried predator wise, because it's starting like a breakdown compost process. It's kind of different than like straight up rotting and stinky, kind of like that. So those are the options we've always used. Oh, vertical gardening. I would definitely want to do some vertical gardening. It's just a little bit more tricky here again because it's so hot and dry. It's definitely something we want to tinker with in the future. Brandon definitely has some ideas with like the ponds and stuff, and do like, it's not quite like the vertical gardening aspect, but to do like a floaty island in the ponds and grow stuff in there. Just because we've thought about the vertical gardening, and depending on the system, it's just super hot and dry. We'd be worried that water, we'd have trouble keeping it cool enough. But it's definitely something we want to experiment with out here. We did like a teeny bit in Montana, but it's also another thing that's kind of sucking power. I mean, you could probably craft up a pretty simple system that wouldn't take too much power. But when it comes to, it's kind of like the well. We don't want to rely on a well because a lot of things can happen to a well that makes it inert. It's no longer helpful. Versus it's going to rain. It can't, you know, it's like the crow. It can't rain all the time, but it's also, the rain is going to come. It's going to rain. And when it rains, it pours. So we'd rather rely on the rainwater catchment. And so when it comes to growing stuff, we don't want to rely on too many man-made ways to grow things, like, you know, aquaponics, and having like a system of pumps and sprayers and, you know, all the different gears and buttons kind of aspect. We want to take out some of the technology aspect of things, so that, because, you know, in a way we're kind of a prepper mindset, whether that's because we're off the grid and want to be prepared for anything, or a tinfoil hat prepper. So you can, it's both, you know, just if there's a crazy storm, everything's shut down, we can't do nothing, things are broken, we have backup plans because we weren't relying on those systems. Versus, but at the same time, like if the world goes to crap and we're not able to buy replacements, we're not able to repair or fix things, we don't want to be reliant on those things. Like, definitely want to use them and utilize them while we can, but if that makes sense. Like, there's so many things I'd love to do, and I'd love to do it big and awesome and have tons of it, but just in my prepper, whether it's tinfoil hat or just to be ready for anything kind of mentality, it's the same with like a chainsaw. I love a chainsaw. Chainsaws are great, but I'd much rather have a few hand saws, because one day that chainsaw may not be something I can use anymore. And if I don't have the arm strength to use those saws, I'm gonna have a hard time. It's gonna be a bad day. So in a sense, we'd rather practice with the primitive tech and rely more on that than the fancy tech. But I love fancy tech. Like, we got solar panels and stuff. We wouldn't have electricity if it wasn't for the fancy tech. So I'm not anti-tech at all, but I want to build things where we're not completely reliant on the tech, at least to certain degrees. Just like propane. A lot of people are off grid, but they have propane. To me, you're still on the grid, sort of. Like, it's one of those gray zones to me, because you have to have something, and it's just like hauling water. Like, we're still connected to the grid sometimes when we're hauling water. But that's why we did the biogas digester. We're now producing our own methane. We don't need to go buy propane anymore, because we don't want to rely on that propane to cook. Because what if one day we don't have propane anymore? And of course, you can have fire, burn stuff, but some places don't have wood to burn. Like our buddy Joe, there's like 10 trees on his property, but he's not going to burn those for wood. So he has to use propane. But what happens if he doesn't have propane anymore? We tell him, hey, let's build you a biogas. And now you have at least some gas that you can burn when you need to cook or get toasty. So when it comes to gardening, that's a big factor when it comes to really trying to work with the native stuff. Because if one day, what if I can't get no seeds anymore? I want to propagate and collect my own seeds, of course, but just pretend I didn't do that. And now I don't have native stuff that's growing, and I don't know what I can eat. And now I can't get seeds from the store, and now I'm just like poop out of luck, because I didn't save seeds, I didn't plant native edibles, and now I'm in trouble because the system is no longer providing me with seeds. So, if that whole ramble makes sense, I think it's a very important aspect to think about if you're going off grid, because if you become reliant, it's just like we're all reliant on the system. I mean, I wouldn't have this jacket if it weren't for the system, this phone, the live streaming, all that. Like, of course, we're still pretty stuck in it, but where we can remove ourselves from it as much as we can, we want to, so that if those things no longer become available, our system doesn't crash. We want to build a homestead that won't crash when things crash, if they do. Or even just like, even if it's not like tinfoil hat crash, even if it's just there's the electrical facility goes out, and there's no more power, our system isn't going to crash because we're on solar. We're good. But it is that thing too. I do think about like, well, what are we going to do in the future when we can't get batteries and we can't get new solar panels? And so that's why I practice making candles. We do a lot of stuff just kind of like in the dark. Like, we're like some creatures in a cave sometimes, because we want to get used to not having a lot of light all the time. Like sometimes going over to people's houses, it's so bright because there's so many lights on all the time. And so even in the sense of solar panels, I'm trying to find the ways, like, okay, what if we don't have solar anymore? What if this system isn't here? And so that's where other systems kind of get set up, and we design certain things in that fashion that if the electric goes out, we're good. Or if the solar goes out, we're good. We can handle no solar. It's not going to be disastrous, so to say. But in a sense, it would suck, because I do like to incubate and hatch my chicks, for example. Without electricity, I can't do that anymore. But there are the cool ancient practices of the different ways how to hatch chicks using those funny little ovens. And then, of course, broody birds, just all natural incubator is great. But the fact we've bred the broody out of our birds, it can be really hard to get a broody bird. So I've actually bred Silky into my flock, which I actually am hoping to get some more Silkies here soon, so I can add in a little bit more Silky into my bloodline, because Silkies are very broody, and I need to make sure I have birds that brood so that I always have incubators available. I mean, mind you, it's on their own time frame, but if I get a broody bird, I'm going to put 100 eggs under her and have my chicks that year. So I love the incubator. I love to hatch out tons of chicks with an incubator, but I want to make sure that I have a backup. I want to make sure that I have birds I know every year will at least go broody and sit on some eggs for me. Even if they get half done with it and give up, I will put them in my shirt and I will finish. I will finish the job if need be. But, and that's the backup aspect. You have your incubator, which would be my main way of making sure I get hatched chicks that year. But my backup is that there's always a broody hen. I usually have 3 or 4 broody hens, and it's a pain in the butt. And sometimes I regret breeding broody in, but that's my backup. And I do my best to think almost anything. I think, okay, backup's backup. Again, tinfoil hat a little bit. What if poop goes down and you can't buy clothes anymore? you know how much work it is to make clothing? It's super fun to create fiber, but people do not understand, unless you've done it, how much it takes to create even like a sock, just one sock. When you start with whatever fibrous material, like sure, a sheep, like that's kind of easy. You already have the fur, you make it into string, you make the sock. Well, if you're doing plant fibers, that's a whole other additional process before you can twist it into string and make the sock. So those are also things just gardening wise. I do want to grow lots of fiber plants, because what if one day we can't really buy clothes anymore? And that's why I think there's no such thing as too many clothes, as long as you wear them all, mostly. Because like I in a sense I do have that concern. What if one day I can't do this? Like I can't buy clothes. I need to know how to make clothes. What if one day I can't buy soap anymore? I need to know how to make soap. Anything, toothpaste, oil, cooking oils, lotions, just anything you use on a daily basis. If shit went down, how would you get those things? And more than necessity things, of course, but like that's where it can get really intense in the sense of what you're trying to grow and create on your landscape. And it's like really daunting and overwhelming a little bit, but that's where like technology is great. The fact we're humans and make and build stuff is great. That instead of having to worry about making clothes and fabrics, that's just where I need to really bulk up my fabric, where we have technology that makes big old sheets of fabric that I can hoard. Not that I really want to hoard it, but enough that I can at least patch our clothes enough that it could possibly last the rest of our lives. As in, by the time we die, you know, these jeans will have switched fabrics like 5 times. Like it's like the same, but it's just been patched over so many times. That kind of aspect. And I think thinking about those things is really important. Not just tinfoil hat, world goes crazy, but also just your homestead, your safety, your needs, you know, your goals, thinking about those types of things. Because for example, in Montana, we could be snowed up in the mountain for a couple of months. So we had to prep and be prepared for that all the time. Okay, 2 months. We have to be prepared for at least 2 months. And that includes animal feed, hay. If we, like, because we were using propane more in Montana, we have to make sure we have enough of those things to last through that time. So it's like, for us, we're not like, it's not just like prepper tinfoil hat. It's just being prepared. And I think that like those things should just mash together, and there shouldn't be prepper. We're just prepared. There's nothing wrong with being prepared. I don't care if you're preparing for an alien invasion. If you're prepared, rock on. Like, you're prepared. And I think that is kind of the biggest thing to try to work into your off-grid homestead system when it comes to gardening, raising animals, any of that. What are you going to do if poop hits the fan? If. And that doesn't have to be like worldwide. I'm talking about a tornado, a hurricane, an earthquake, just natural disasters, or just like crazy human disasters like we like to just, you know, cause havoc too. So, but being prepared for those things off grid, like, is just super important. Like, cause, you know, if you're in a city and something crazy happens, you know, there's a benefit because you're in the city, but it's not a big benefit because say there's like a big crash on a freeway and the hospital is totally filled up and you cut your finger. You're gonna be the last one to get help in that general sense. But if you're off grid and you're prepared for those kinds of things, you don't have to go to the hospital because you have at least basic knowledge and ability to maybe stitch up a finger that's gonna be good enough their fingers aren't gonna fall off. Just like a silly example in that general sense. Because like the more, and I think too, the more you become self-reliant in those ways, the more you want to become self-reliant. I think it's kind of a domino effect that once you go off grid and you go, oh my gosh, solar is so cool. Electricity, I'm growing like my own food. This is super cool. Okay, so what else do I not have to go to town for? What else can I produce here so I don't have to go to town? Whether it's to not deal with people or the chaoticness of the city, or it's cheaper, more healthy, whatever reason. I feel that there's definitely a domino effect, especially just like ladies that I know and talk to. Once they really get into gardening or like chickens, like just like the social media, there's all the funny things. You buy a woman, what is it, or you give a woman a sourdough and she has a homestead the next day kind of thing. Like we will do that. Like well, I'm not speaking for all of us, me and some of the ladies I've spoken to, like we just kind of went down that rabbit hole. Like, oh my gosh, a garden, fresh food, nature outside. This is delicious. Forget the city. We want to try and do everything we can here on the property. And it gets really daunting the more you delve into it. Like I said, making clothes. Like, I can't imagine trying to make clothes all the time. Like, we don't have children, but if you have children and you're trying to do that, like, you got to be making like 20 different pairs of clothes every day because children grow so fast that you'd just be making clothes all the time. And like, you know, making soap is decently easy, but like almost at the same time, I'd rather just like buy goat soap from somebody else. And that's where community comes in too. Like, I don't want to make no soap, but she makes soap and I have the goat milk. So we'll do a trade. I give you the goat milk and I get goat milk soap. So sometimes it's definitely not about doing it all yourself. It's definitely about creating community to barter and trade, essentially, to take off some of that weight of trying to do everything yourself from scratch in that sense. Like, I know I see it a lot on social media. This isn't like a dig or nothing, but like there's so many ladies out there who they're making the clothes, they're doing the bread, and they're doing the garden and the milking the cow, and they're doing all of this. And there's some things I'm like, no, my neighbor does that, and we'll do some trade because that's not something I want to do. Pigs, for example. I love pigs, they're sweet, adorable. I do not want to raise them. That is just not something I want to do. But I have a friend who does it, so we can work out, oh, you need some pork? I need this. And we'll do some tradesy. And so that takes the desire for bacon and raising it off my plate. I do have to kind of think about how I would pay for said bacon, but I think the community aspect to homesteading off-grid, growing a garden, getting the knowledge, experience, practice, like that's the most important thing too. Like you can read about off-grid gardening, whatever practice, whatever animal, you can read about it and study it as much as you want. But from experience, I tell you that you have no idea what you're doing until you're like in the dirt doing it. And sometimes that really frustrates people. They think it's gonna be this very smooth, easy process because they read the bullet points. Okay, I do this, 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 and this. Well, what these bullet points don't tell you is that life happens, that nature happens, that the world is not bullet points. It is not a black and white straight line ordeal. It is a cluster of chaos, of wonderfully annoying circumstances. And when you go off grid, you're dealing with those even more. Like off grid, you're kind of almost at the whims of nature, at the mercy of Mother Nature a little bit. And you have to be able to adapt to that. And if you can't adapt to that, you're either going to be really frustrated and have a bad time, or you're going to give up. And I've seen both for very different reasons. And like, especially gardening and being off grid, it's hard. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of hauling water, watering things, you know, and with our zone 1, like it's a hefty chore when everything is big and green. And like, I can't imagine trying to grow huge gardens off grid, and partially because we don't have a well as well, of course. But people tend to overwhelm their plate before they've gotten in any practice. And when it comes to gardening, I feel like that can happen pretty often. It depends on where you are, your personal climate, etc. But people go in and they start these massive gardens. Like, I have some friends and they're like, I'm having so much trouble. And I was like, that's because you planted a whole acre and thought that it would just do its thing. You just had to water it. There's a lot of love and care that should, not exactly necessary, but if you want a good harvest, you better love your plants a little bit. And that is something I've seen pretty often, is definitely more Montana. People down here don't garden as much, which kind of makes sense. It's hotter, drier, but at the same time, it's these really long seasons. I would think I would know more people who did a lot more gardening, I guess, but hot in the water, I get it. But in Montana, a lot of people would start these big giant gardens and then just be super frustrated. And it's like, okay, you need to chop this garden at least in half. Do that a couple of years. Get good knowledge under your belt and kind of know what's going on before you expand out so much. Because just to me personally, what I've seen, experienced, yada yada, that it's people get burnt out really freaking fast because they put too much on their plate at once. And like we're kind of like guilty of that too, but this is our second homestead off-grid revitalized land type of build. So this we're kind of, we got the groove a little bit. We did all the things wrong. Sort of. Hey, psst, psst, you be nice. Sorry, cat fight. Not literally, but but you know, we've got some practice in. We got a decent hold. And partially, like my friend actually said this to me. She was just like, you know, I bet the fact that Montana was so much harder, just the snow in the winter, it's cold, it's brutal, it's gnarly, that coming down to Arizona, it seems super easy, and it's super true. Like, so if you're wanting to homestead somewhere that has long, gnarly, cold winters, it does make it a lot harder in certain ways. Like, totally doable. We did it for 8 years. Totally doable. Not as enjoyable. So fair warning. All right, let's check a couple of comments. Any chance using Fresnel lens on moist rocks to have them break pop? Oh, that'd be a cool idea. We actually have a friend, we have a tile saw, so we do saw some to see what's up. I mean, that'd be a pretty cool experiment. I mean, I'd be intrigued to see what would happen. A lot of the rock we have out here though is basalt, and so it's like the lava rock stuff, but it's very high in iron, so I'd be a little nervous to pop iron rocks, I must admit. Would you sell worms for my compost? I think so. I think you'd have to talk to Brandon about that. If you go to Brandon's channel, his email is in there. And I think he does. I'm not sure. Because we do want to expand the worm bins a little bit, but I'd have to ask Brandon, or if you wanted to ask Brandon, you could message in one of his videos, because I don't want to say yes and be wrong. Middle way, any plans on offering woofing options on your land? So that is not something we're doing. Privacy, safety, those kinds of things a little bit. But we're hoping at some point one day that we'll get it. Brandon wants to get another chunk of land where we will do those types of things, and we'll do full builds and workshops and those kinds of things. But we don't, it's just a privacy thing, just our personal preference. You know, we're not very comfortable with people coming and being on the property unless we've like an actual relationship with the person. And like, to me, I just find that very important, especially with the tinfoil hat kind of prepper idea. So we're hoping to, instead of on our property here, we want another one, because we really do want to do that. Like, I would love to do classes and all that fun stuff, but we want a specific space that's just for that. Hi Mark, I'm glad to see you. Thank you for joining in on the live. Just a quick hello from icy cold Michigan. I'm enjoying your live stream while working on this trailer. Heck yes. Is it like a refurbished trailer? Or like a house trailer, or like a pull stuff trailer? Just so I know. But I bet it's super chilly there. I'm extra grateful for the sun. I have some friends from all over showing me how cold it is, and I'm not jealous. I'm sorry. You need to stay warm and toasty. You stay well and toasty. Cause burr, I don't miss that. John for climb. Greetings from the high desert in SoCal. Heck yes. First time here, so I'm grateful for the algorithm at last getting it right. Heck yes. I'm glad you're here and glad that you found me. We're definitely probably in pretty similar climates. I'm trying to think. I can't remember the elevation over there. We just might have a difference in elevation, but man, if you're somewhere hot and dry, this is definitely, hopefully I can be helpful. Because it's definitely been a journey. Like, I definitely had lots of growing experience in Montana, growing up, working on the ranch. My grandma had a garden. And then, you know, we were off grid growing lots of stuff in Montana for a while. And then coming down here, like, those of you who may have missed some of the beginning, like, it's super different down here in Arizona when it comes to watering, because it's green and kind of dry all year round. Like, even it'll snow a foot and then melt, and then a week later, like, you gotta water your plants in the dead of winter. And I am not used to that at all. Montana, everything goes to sleep for 6 months. Nothing grows, nothing crows, nothing, critters are not really wandering about. And here it's year long. Like Montana, predators, it's more a seasonal, spring, summer into fall, winter. I don't really worry about predators. Here, nothing hibernates. So it's super different in that sense too. But having to keep plants like watered and healthy and alive through winter is super weird. It's super different, and it takes a lot of water. It's like the best worst thing. Like, it's great that the season is so long, but we're in Arizona and we need that much more water. So it's definitely kind of that catch-22 when it comes to Arizona growing, coming from somewhere so cold with the shorter season. Like, I went from 3-month growing season to nearly 12-month growing season. And it's weird. It's weird. Like, even my body thinks it's weird. It's like, we should be hibernating right now. Why are we not hiding out in the Earthship from the winter when we can be outside in Arizona in the winter all year round? It's super nuts. It's super nuts. All right, some comments. Journey with Cindy, I'll text him. Oh, awesome, cool. Yeah. I wasn't sure if you had his number or not. Middle way, that's understandable. Thanks for understanding. Thank you for understanding. Some people don't like that answer very much, and it's not because I don't trust people, but I don't trust people. You know, it's like I do and I don't, and you never know, and it's just, you know, our privacy and safety, and that's one reason a lot of people go off grid, is because they want to avoid people within their sanctuary. So we want to create a different space. We can keep our sacred space, and then we can create another. It could be a sacred space that everybody's welcome to join, and in that way too, it's kind of like we feel like it's just easier that way too, because with our projects within our kind of bubble, we can be a little particular, and it can be really hard to have to teach people how to do things the way we want each time we're trying to do a project, if that makes sense. Versus if we had like our own or a different land, it wouldn't be that big of a deal, because if there's some mess ups, it's not that big of a deal versus within our space. But one day I would really love to do workshops and stuff. I really hope we get there at some point. Some snowboarder, great live talk, really enjoy what you have to say. I appreciate that very much, because it's one of those things. People, to me, it's, you know, the off-grid life has been romanticized. Homestead life has been romanticized. Not saying you can't have the pretty, perfect, romantic off-grid lifeness, but there's so much grit and frustration and learning curves that are just really missed. Whether, like, you know, even if they're not showing it in the video, I think it really needs to be talked about when it comes to dealing and adapting and working with what you have, what you can afford, and that it's not exactly easy. Like, it is a love-hate relationship. There are some days when I look at these cats and I look at these chickens and everyone has been frustrating me all day, and I say, everybody goes into the freezer. Everybody is gonna be a burger. And, you know, I throw a bit of a fit because I'm frustrated, I'm done, I don't want to do this anymore. But then when you chill out, you turn around and it's super worth it. Like it's frustrating, but it's worth it. And I feel if that is not like that aspect right there, that it sucks, but it's awesome. It's great, but you're gonna hate it. It's super fulfilling, but sometimes you feel empty because you've given everything. And I feel that this life, you have to make peace with that. And not that that's going to be everybody's exact experience, but I've experienced with other people and friends too that you will hit that point. You will hit a point where you're just like, we're flipping the table, we're throwing our hat, we're stomping it, we're out, we're done. And I guess in my experience and what I've experienced and seen from other people is that if you can't make it past that kind of breakdown, like seriously, there will be a day you are done. Like you were absolute. You start packing. You start like posting your animals for sale. You're done. And if you can't click out of that, you are done. Like, in kind of that sense, because like I have been there. I've been there a few times. Just hopefully someone will find amusement in this story. One of the times was in the middle of winter in Montana, and it was like -40, and we just got back from town, and I had a sled full of hay and animal feed. I had a pack full of groceries and animal feed, and we're hauling these sleds up this really steep hill, and I was walking up. These animals better love me. These animals better I am freezing to death, pulling like 100 pounds, hauling like just, it was a ton of weight, and I was just freezing. And there was a point where I was going kind of down the hill and the sled hit my feet and I like fell back onto the sled. It was like a stupid cartoon where you're like falling with the sled because it tripped you. That was me. And when the sled stopped, I got mad and I cried and I threw a huge fit and I was done. I was not doing this anymore. Finally get everything home, go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and I was like, okay, I was really mad, but I feel better now. I feel better now. And the people I know who kind of don't wake up the next morning feeling better, it probably just isn't quite the life for you yet. Or you need to work on some stuff to make things a little bit easier so you don't give up. And that's just something that you really don't know or understand that aspect until you live with it. Until you have a goat that is so impossible that you just want to eat it right there, just right there, one bite, gone, done. We're done with this problem. And you want to be done. Just like, I mean, in a sense, like I have siblings and I kind of help raise my siblings a little bit. So I kind of have that mother-sibling understanding of the frustration that children can be. Homesteading and animals is like that times 2. And then if you have kids, it's a whole other insane show. But also, like I said, it's fulfilling. It's fabulous. I'm excited every single time I go out and collect eggs. Every time. I see those eggs, and it's so fabulous. And it makes all my frustrations worth it. Maybe not while I'm frustrated, but in the end, it makes it worth it. And if you can't find that I guess that appreciation, like whether you're just growing your garden, whether you just have chickens for pets, whatever it is, whatever you're doing with your homesteady off-gridness, we're all doing our own thing. But I feel that if you can't find the good things in just about everything, even in those really bad situations, if you can't pull those good things out and have that kind of appreciation, it's just going to be harder. And that's just, like I said, my experience, what I've seen, those kinds of things. The people, like I had a great friend, tried the off-grid thing, and she was just irritated the whole time. Like she could not find any joy in any of it, which that's just some of us. Stop doing it. Like I can understand that you want to do it. You want to have the goats for the milk and the chicken for the eggs and the little garden for the vegetables. I get you want it. But if it pisses you off this bad and you're having that much trouble finding the joy with it makes you mad but you love it kind of thing, then it's not going to get better. And that's just how some of us are built. Some of us are built for the city. Some of us are built for the country. Some of us are built for whatever it is. And it's okay not to be. And sometimes it's just scaling back what you're trying to do. If you just are having so much trouble growing a garden, maybe try some chickens. forget the garden, just raise some chickens for a minute and see how that does. See if that's more your thing when it comes to trying to off-grid and homestead. You don't have to do all the things to be homesteady off-gridness. You could just do one little thing. And maybe you don't fit the perfect definition, but being off-grid, homesteading, growing, gardening, like, of course, prepping, self-sufficiency, getting away from the toxins, whatever those types of reasons are all valid. But I think the most valid reason to do this is because you want to and you like it. Because if you don't have those two things, you're going to hate it and you're not going to like it. And it's not going to get any better. It's probably going to get harder and more stressful over time. And like I said, that's something I've seen people go through. And people need to know these things. Sometimes the homestead life just doesn't fit somebody. Sometimes it does. Sometimes they try and they fail, and they keep trying until they make it. Some people, they try, they fail, and they just never do it again. But if they just tried a little longer, they could have made it. And that's with everybody and everything. But I think homesteading and doing the off-grid thing, moving away from the system, is extra tricky because whatever you want to call it, whether you want to call it brainwashing, the man, the system, whatever it is, it's pretty hard to pull away from that. It is. I haven't had McDonald's in 2 years and I still crave McDonald's. Like what is that? And that was like a super light bulb moment that I was like, yeah, the system's got us. Like, they got us in every way they can get us. And, for me personally, part of doing what we do is to try to separate as much as I can, but also use the system. The system's got good stuff. Like, if there's a buffet and there's good stuff on it, I'm not going to eat the poopy stuff. I'm going to eat some of that good stuff. So I want to be able to utilize the system as carefully as I can, if that makes sense. I'm not trying to rely on it, but I'm going to use it. And hopefully by the time it may not be there anymore, I won't really need it anyway. If that all made sense. Mud Fossil Gaia, I made it past that day. Rock on. See, that's the best feeling. I had a really bad day, but I made it and we're here and it's all good. Colin Price, Nika, do you guys have a composting toilet system you guys use or do you have septic? So we do. So when it comes to the rules here in our county, it's the 3, or maybe it's a 4-barrel system. It's like a composting toilet, but it's barrels. And it's where, like, you fill up one, it gets set aside, you fill up the other, it gets set aside, and by the time you get to the last one, the first one has been sitting for 6 months, I believe, and then you're able to dump that into the landscape. It's one of those things that can be really hard, like if you're reading into the stuff with your county, like some stuff is really gray, kind of like, well, what if this and like what if that, because it says you can dump the material onto the landscape. Does it need to be in a hole? Does it need to be this far from the wash? Those kinds of aspects. But we do that system, but ours sits for a year, so we have quite a few bins. But they sit full for a full year, and then Brandon hot composts it, just a little extra composting. And then some of the trees, there's like a couple of, sorry, I just brain farted, pinyon pine. They're not ponderosas, they're pinyon pines. So we'll use it as mulch and compost. And that's kind of the thing, like, if you're like, ew, that's disgusting. I was like, it's kind of the thing, like, we think that human poop is gross, and that's mostly because of what we eat. If we ate a little better, it wouldn't be so gnarly. But poop is what makes this world go round. It's bacteria poop that feed the plants. It's animal poop that feeds the plants and the bacteria. And it's, if you watch South Park and Hanky the Christmas Pooh, he has that song about the circle of life, but it's in Pooh version. That's very, very accurate when it really comes down to it. And so essentially we're just implementing that into the cycle, because we are the only animal that like poops in a same spot and has it go somewhere else. You know, like, I mean, in a sense of following nature, technically we should be like a cat. And so we like the composting system because we're not literally flushing nutrients down the drain. We definitely would kind of like the septic kind of system, but they're just really expensive. And so the plan is to have like an actual septic at some point. It's just getting to that point so that we have that. Gnarly poop. Yeah, gnarly poop. It's gnarly. Like, we eat really bad food, so it, yeah. All right. What is that? Zigzag. Have you all thought about building an Earthship? So we have built a Gabion Wallapini. You can see some of it in some of the videos, but again, because of privacy and stuff like that, it won't be shown very much, very often. But we essentially created a greenhouse, an Earthship style greenhouse, and that's where we hang out. So we built, in Montana, we built 4 Earthships. The first one was a dome style, and then the second one was more the global model style Earthship, just a lot smaller. But we built one, and then we added on a second, so it was like this really long Earthship with the double greenhouse and everything. And yeah, I love Earthships. To me, they are kind of the answer to housing. There's, they just need tinkered with in the sense of how they're built, but it's like nature. What does nature do in the winter? It goes underground. What does it do when it's really hot? It goes underground. What does it do when it's really windy? It goes underground. We need to build our houses with the earth, with the ground, not with wood. That's my personal opinion. But they're super effective at keeping you warm. They can help grow food. They're just such an amazing structure. Like, and maybe I'm biased because I've built them and lived in them. But being in Montana, dealing with the really cold winters we did, if we didn't have a rocket stove in our Earthship or couldn't burn wood, we could survive in our Earthships through an entire Montana winter pretty comfortably. Like, we wouldn't have to worry about freezing to death. So that fact alone, to me, that's how we should be building stuff that can keep itself warm. At least a house that can keep itself warm. Like, yeah, I don't want to be burning wood all night to keep a not Earthship house warm, if that makes sense. Middle way, I was wondering about the poop stuff. It's crazy that they can dictate on your poop. If you're conscious and can store until they decompose safely, they should just let people be. And I super agree. Like, to me, when it comes to where they try to stick their fingers, to me they act like it's law, when technically it's not. It's like regulation in that sense, but like they act like it's law, but you can get in trouble and they can fine you and all those things. Like, I agree with like build code safety and all those things when it comes to permitting and yada yada. Like, I agree, but a lot of places overstep super hard. Like, you can have homeless people who live in tents, but people can't build their own house and live in it. And most people are going to want to build a house decently safe, right? Like, nobody's going to build a house I'm going to purposefully build this so it falls in. Nobody thinks that. And if somebody goes, I don't know if this is going to work, we should be able to call up city boy manager, gives you permits for stuff and be like, hey, I need some help because you were supposed to help us have safe houses. Tell me what I need to fix to make this safe. And that should be it. That should be the only thing the government really gets to do, is be like, oh, this looks safe enough. I mean, you want it more than safe enough, but they shouldn't be like, no, it has to be X, X, Y, Z with like 1 million pounds of concrete. No, like, this is America, like, land of the free. Are we not? Like, we're supposed to own our property, but we technically don't either. So it's just one of those funny, annoying things that, like, we think we're free. We think we own our land or our house, but we really don't, because we technically can't do whatever the hell we want. I mean, some places. Some places you can. Some places you can if you file paperwork. Some places you have HOAs and you don't even get to pick what color your house is. Like, it's so backwards. It's so backwards. But we are lucky though to be somewhere that does, just kind of backtrack a little. We are lucky to be somewhere that does allow for compost toilets. It is, like I said, depending on what your community or the code and all that says. Most places do allow at least a compost toilet. Some places are less worried and you can do like an outhouse where you dig a pit. Some places, you know, you have to be super far away from any water source or wash. I can't remember what county it was, but you got to be like 100 feet away from the wash for any sort, or maybe it was more than that. I can't remember. You have to be so far. You can't, nobody can take a leak there. You can't have a compost toilet there. You can't have an outhouse there. You can't dump the bucket material there. So definitely super annoying. Because most people want to be safe about it. Like, nobody wants to be gross about that stuff. Like, who would be gross about it? I mean, most people would think, hey, I want to keep my water clean. I want to keep this clean. I want to properly take care of this stuff. Like, very few people don't want to do that. And if they don't want to do that, then yes, they should get in trouble. Like, they should at least give a crap to take care of their crap appropriately. Forever pooping in the outhouse was the norm. When we were in Montana, we had a shovel for almost a year. It's just one of those things. Like, to me, what's not normal is the toilet. Like, why are we putting that stuff in fresh water and then flushing it? Because, like, you know, people don't understand. When you have a garden and you have that tomato and you take that tomato away, you are taking that material and nutrients away from the soil. And then we eat it, and then it comes out the other end, and instead of those nutrients going back into the soil appropriately, we're like pumping it into the ocean and then wondering why the ocean is warm. I don't know. Sorry. Any plans on installing geothermal piping to help regulate the temperature in key areas? There's really no places that we really have to worry about warming too much. It's kind of like geothermal piping. If you were on the channels in the beginning, we did what did Brandon call it? It's essentially like a thermal battery. There we go, that's what it's called. So it's a thermal battery, but essentially all that is, it's a tube in our floor. And on one end, it levels the tube and it comes out the floor. And then the other side, it's like a vent pipe that comes up to the ceiling, and there's a fan, and we can flip the fan to either suck or blow air. But when, like in the winter and the rocket stove is going, it actually sucks the warm air in through the fan that's at the ceiling, sucks it down through the little vent pipe and through the floor. So the floor is absorbing all that heat, and then we flip the fan the other way so it sucks air and pushes out cooler air. It does the opposite in the summer. So we did one of those on the inside of the greenhouse, and we'll be doing another one for the secondary greenhouse. So I think those are similar, but essentially just good circulation of air, whether it's cool air to cool things or warm air to warm things. And that's kind of why the rocket stove is super awesome, because it's all that mass, and it's super helpful in keeping stuff warm. I love it. Earthships plus rocket stove, perfect combo. DD3, hi Nika, just curious, we have free range cattle out here. Is it a good idea to collect dry cow dung to mix with soil and grow with? Oh, Darren and Susan. Hi, Darren and Susan. Yeah, definitely. I collect that up. The only thing I would recommend is to compost it. I myself prefer a hot compost, so where you get things cooking and the temperature rises, because this may just be because I'm an asshole and biased, but these cows do not, I don't want to say they don't look healthy, but to me they don't. Like I said, I'm used to free range cows, and I don't know enough about these cows and what they do with them. I don't like the look of their poop. It does not look like healthy cow poop to me personally. Me personally, okay? Not dogging, me. So I would definitely want to be sure to compost it really well so you don't, whatever bacteria is in their gut that makes their poop look funny and all mucusy, like I notice for the cows around where we are, I don't want to put that directly into my garden. I want to make sure it is composted first, and that's any poop, honestly, for me. Whether it's these cows, my goats, my chickens, I don't care. Any poop, compost it, hot compost it first. You kill the seeds, you kill the icky bacteria, and then you also boost the good fungus and the good bacteria. So any poop, I'm down for any poop. That sounded really weird, but for the gardens and for everything, like any poop is great. Just compost it first. That is my pet peeve. Do not take just any poo and spread it. You have no idea what you're spreading, whether that's a disease, a parasite. You don't want to risk it. For me, my personalness, always hot compost. That's just how I feel about that. But yeah, I've collected cow patties, like some of them that look like they've been sitting here for a million years. They are just these dry, hollow poops. But yeah, collect that all up, wet it down, and like I said, compost it. Like you don't have to, it's not necessary. I just recommend it. Magic Moons, I love your mentality. I appreciate that very much. So Magic Moons, I'm out in Tonopah. Is that how you say that? Tonopah? And have no immediate neighbors, yet I compost my poop too. It kind of depends, like, you know, wherever you are and what you can do. And like, you know, I'm not saying don't do things you're not supposed to, but also, this is America. This is America. I'm gonna do what I want as long as I ain't hurting nobody. Leave me alone. Get out of here. Shoot. Shoot. The Humanure Handbook by Joseph Jenkins. Yes. We had a friend who had it and we read it. We used it when crossing the country with a portable system for 50 people. That's awesome. Heck yes. Yeah, we definitely read that and we got so many good ideas. Like, you know, just great info. I highly recommend that book to anyone who's interested, even if just like to know about it. Because like I was saying earlier, you know, so many people are like, ew, human poop. Why would you, You put horse poop on your lawn. You have a cat box in your house. Like there is a box of kitty poop just chilling in the corner over there. Like don't tell me you and partially it's just the natural system. Like I said, technically to me I feel that we should be digging little holes and being a cat and burying it because it's going right back into the ground to be broken down and composted. Just like every other poop on this planet. Like we as humans are so weird. We have to like separate everything, including our poop, from the nature. And that just does not compute. At the same time though, like, I mean, it's not really better because no matter what, nature has to deal with our nastiness. Because like, that's the other thing, you know, when it comes to, if you're doing compost, like anything humanure, like again, regulations, it kind of depends, but in a lot of scenarios, like when it comes to urine, you water it down before you water with it. But it's the funny thing, oh no, I kind of lost my train of thought, because we separate our icky stuff. And instead we could be utilizing it, but instead we put it in other places where it doesn't need to go there. That is not where it should go. You know, we fertilize pastures with cow poop, but it's not the cows that ate some of that food. Like maybe if it was like corn or wheat or something, but like it's a lot of times we're replacing the wrong nutrients in fields because if there was tomatoes grown there, you need to replace what the tomatoes took. You know, if this was grown there and if you're fertilizing with the same stuff year over year and not getting better results, you obviously need to use something else. And like it just annoys me how much we as humans separate ourselves from nature. Like we're so weird that we got to flush our poop down the toilet and it actually causes problems down the way. And that's weird to me. But it's also being careful. That's where I kind of lost my train of thought. If you take medication, and that includes birth control, heart medication, whatever it is, make sure you kind of know what that is going to do within your compost, or your urine, like if you're gonna water with pee, if you're gonna do the composty poop and fertilized stuff. I don't know exactly what you'd look up because I don't really take any meds besides aspirin. But like if you take those medications, definitely know what they do during kind of composting or breaking down. Like, because, you know, if you're a lady and you're taking hormonal birth control and you're watering your plants with your piddle, you could cause some weird stuff in your garden with those hormones. I'm not exactly sure what. Probably some weird sexual conversion in bugs. I don't know. But you don't want to cause any of those issues. Like, you don't want to give little critters heart palpitations because they ate something full of your heart medication. Like, just silly examples. Like, just throwing that out there is where you do want to be careful when it comes to utilizing those things on your landscape, because we as humans take medicines and eat weird things. You don't want to put that into your garden space or the landscape. But we kind of do anyway because we dump sewage on the land. And I mean, nature has to deal with it anyway. Or we flush it down the toilet. But if in your garden space, just be aware of that. As long as the cattle are not eating glyphosate. I agree, but here's the thing. We are all downwind from each other. If Mr. Farmer here has straw or wheat and he sprays with glyphosate, and Mr. Farmer down here who is just downwind does not, he is sprayed with glyphosate. To me, there's no such thing as organic. There's no such thing as organic anymore. We are all downwind from each other. I grew kind of, not so much this area of Arizona, but I grew up in an agriculture state. We would drive by some truck spraying some nasty crap and you smell it for the next 30 miles plus. There is no such thing as organic. You can avoid things, like if you know this was sprayed with glyphosate, avoid it. Avoid it. But to me, it doesn't make a difference. Like I said, Mother Nature has to deal with everything anyway. It doesn't matter if it was sprayed here or sprayed there or sprayed over here. The wind is going to carry it. The rain is going to carry it. The rivers are going to carry it. The animals are going to carry it. There is no longer an escape from this nasty stuff that we want to avoid. We can minimize our exposure as much as we possibly can, but there's no such thing as organic anymore. It is all tainted. There's no such thing. That's me, my personal opinion. So yes, we do want to avoid things, but we can't avoid it. It's just impossible. And that's the thing, you know, if I get a pile of poop from said rancher, I have no idea what he's fed those animals. And that goes with anybody who collects poop and stuff from anywhere. You don't know what he injected those animals with, what medications they have been on, what parasites they have, what their feed was sprayed with, what the land was sprayed with that they're on. I mean, like, how long did we have nuclear testing not too far from here? I'm not worried about organic anymore. I'm worried about growing things as best as I can, as healthy as I can, because that's all I can do. You can't avoid these things anymore unless you live in like a bubble. And I don't want to live in no bubble. I'd rather decay on the surface slowly and enjoy what life is left on the surface than be in a bubble. And to stress over that all the time. I know some people who stress out so hard trying to keep everything organic. And there's no such thing. Even when you read into what like this apple, okay, there's qualifications that make this apple organic. It's only because it has this percent, it's organic. But if it had this much more, it's not organic anymore. Oh, it has just this teeny little bit of this. Well, that's like just a hair below the threshold. So it's still organic. Even though it has that nasty stuff in it, it's only a teeny tiny little bit. So it's still organic. but it's not organic. But it is, if that makes sense. So like, I totally dig trying to avoid those things. Like, do definitely, of course, think about it, be aware, look at the ingredients list. But you can't avoid it. Just like microplastics. A lot of people kind of get on Brandon or I with microplastics because we have tarps in our ponds. And to me, I'm less worried about the tarp in my pond. I'm more worried about the fact that a tire can shed up to 2 pounds of microplastics in its lifetime. So think of all the tires on the road right now, just slowly shedding off 2 pounds of rubber into the atmosphere and into the land. You know, like, and that's just me personally. You know, like I said, you can't escape these things anymore. And like, for me, like I said, that's my opinion. And so I try not to focus in on those things. I work on how to avoid, how to upcycle, how to try and help the nature as much as I can. And of course, to do my best to not fuel those things. But again, it's impossible. Like, we are not self-sufficient yet. So when we need something, we have to go into town, which thus is fueling the things that I don't like. So the more that we can separate from the system, the more we can separate from being some of that fuel. But at the same time, like I said, we kind of need the system to build up. So it's kind of like, it's such a frustrating thing for me, because I'd love to be some like super crunchy, full organic, never buys a bit of plastic ever. I'd love to be able to do that. I've tried really hard. And it's really hard to avoid plastics, avoid chemicals altogether. We're talking about like kind of as a whole here. It's hard. It's super hard and it's super frustrating. And so for us, it's more avoiding. We're not focusing on trying to avoid those things, but it's not like we're spraying our property with those things. Like, that's kind of the other thing. Like, yes, avoid glyphosate, but it's not like we're spraying our property. So even if we did get a little bit with the straw, it's not the end of the world in that sense, because if someone over there is spraying it, we're sprayed. Like, we're downwind. They toot up there, we're gonna smell it down here. And that's planetarily. We are all in the same atmosphere, baby. We are all breathing the same stuff. I mean, it's a little grosser in some places, but if you catch my drift. Okay, let me check the comments and end this little rant of mine. Webin had said, so basically crackheads shouldn't compost or poop it. Yeah, don't do that. It's found in Wonder Bread now. And that's the thing, is it's found everywhere now. You can't escape these things. All right. Okay. So there's a change of subject here. Changing the subject, LOL. Where do you get your seeds? Native seeds, native seed search out of Tucson, for instance. Is that like if I'm reading that right, native seed search out of Tucson, is that like where you go and buy a bunch of seeds, like a seed congregation? Because I have no idea what you mean by that, and I apologize. But where I get my seeds, so my seed collection started off with seeds from Montana. So I had like my big bulk, and you know, I grew some of the stuff down here, and I always leave fruit on the plant to harvest those seeds. And then a lot of the native seeds we've gotten, you know, we've bought some here, friends give us some here, we collect some from the nature there. So it's getting seeds just kind of from everywhere, as well as, I talked about it a little earlier, but when it comes to the plants I am growing here, I'm definitely like trying to be very specific in the sense of, oh yeah, this tomato plant particularly did like super good. So I want to make sure that I fertilize a little flower and kind of separate it out so that it can grow big and healthy, and essentially like almost let it go bad on the plant and pick it and get those seeds, because it's a super healthy plant. It's, you know, had a good relationship with this environment and can deal with it. And so that year over year, I'm constantly cultivating seeds of plants, or constantly cultivating plants to get seeds from that can work with this environment, kind of, it's adapting. You're modifying. Like, in a sense, it's a genetic kind of modification, sort of, but just like natural, by breeding and growing and seeing how they do and picking and choosing. Because I think that's one of the best ways to really have hardy plants. You grow the plants not only to eat, but to propagate them to be stronger in your environment. Magic Moon Oasis. Have you ever grown the MJ? Yes. We did a lot of that up in Montana. Not, because like Montana, we were like sort of a dispensary, sort of, not exactly. So we did that for a while. It's a lot of work, especially on top of homesteading. So just what we're allowed to down here. How water is there? Do you feel cover crops are a must or just a waste of water? No, cover crops, super helpful. So when it comes to how my method of madness, adapted from Montana, but also the experimenting / experience from being down here, cover crops, fabulous. They will actually save you more water because they're shading the ground, they're keeping it cooler, they're protecting it, and by keeping roots cooler, the plants are happier. They're able to uptake water more efficiently and effectively. I think the only thing is you do want to try to find cover crops that are going to be more suited for your area. So like, we're going to pretend, I don't know how accurate this is exactly, so we're pretending here, but we're going to take clover and pretend there's 4 different types of clover. This one can handle extreme cold, this one can handle extreme heat, and these 2 are right in the middle. You're probably going to want ones that are going to be able to handle more the extreme heat versus the ones that are a little bit more on the cold side. That kind of aspect. Because you always want to be promoting plants that can do, trying to think of how to word this. You want to promote plants that, I'm trying to think, you can ignore, neglect in a general sense. Not that you have to, but if you have more plants that don't require a ton of water to be healthy, the fact you're giving them more water, they will hopefully be bigger and healthier. But with anything, whether it's cover crops, your vegetables, and not like everything either. Like, you don't have to only grow drought-tolerant plants. But things like cover crop, I think it is important to go for maybe a more drought-tolerant plant, because like, it's kind of that thing with plants is they will drink more water if you offer it, but it doesn't mean they're going to drink more water, if that makes sense. So like, cover crops are great, and in reality they're not going to really, we have this idea that plants take away from other plants. If that happens, there's an imbalance in the system, and that could be these 2 plants shouldn't be planted together. It could be because there's a lack of this or a lack of that, in that sense. So when it comes to soil and moisture and water and plants stealing nutrients and water from each other, that there's an imbalance in there. So for our garden beds, the more biology we create, the bacteria, the fungus, the organic matter, the worms, the bug, just the whole system, the more we can promote that and promote a good balanced system, everything kind of cushions itself. Like, sure, maybe these 2 plants aren't best friends, but this is really healthy soil, so they're not going to fight, if that makes sense. So it's the same thing with cover crops. As long as you got healthy soils and, everything's developing nicely, you shouldn't be using how I would see like way more water. Of course, you're going to need a little bit more water because they do need it. But especially in Arizona, when it comes to keeping the ground covered, a live mulch, a living mulch that cover crop is fabulous, is super great. And for here, I do chaos gardening, slightly organized chaos gardening, but I plant stuff densely. Like, I pack them together. Like, you don't walk, You don't walk into a jungle that's lush and deliciously beautiful and think these plants are too close together. There's not enough spacing up in here. They are stealing each other's water. They're stealing each other's nutrients. If that was the case, there wouldn't be a jungle. It's just kind of how I see it. So to me, the more you can pack stuff, you want to kind of cultivate healthy relationships between plants. Like if they do hate each other, don't plant them together. Give them some space at least. But the more that, like to me, my personalness, the more you can mimic nature. Of course, you have to adapt to your area, but here, Arizona, the places that are lush and thick are lush and thick. There's no separation of these plants. Like, I don't know what is with us humans and wanting to segregate everything and only give everything its little space and spot. But that is not nature. Nature wants to throw it all in a pile and see how it does. And what makes it, makes it. And what doesn't, doesn't. And what does make it is what becomes super awesome. So that's kind of how I play the game a little bit. Like, the strongest survive. You want to cultivate healthy plants. You want to raise healthy animals. You don't nurture the sick. You don't nurture the weak. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Like if I have an animal, like say I'm hatching out chicks, and there's a chick that comes out of the shell that, with my experience, I know it's not going to make it. I'm not going to try to make it and have a weak genetic line within my flock, because then I just weaken my flock as a whole. And some people might not like that, but that's what nature does. That is why we have terms, survival of the fittest. Survival of the fittest. And we have removed ourselves from that so far that we actually promote genetic weakness. And like, it's one of those things, it's touchy. People don't like hearing that, but like, okay, I'm gonna get a little personal in a sort of sense. Like, I'm a mixed kid. I'm very mixed. And because of that, and some people in my family, I have genetic weaknesses that I'm stuck with. And I don't like promoting any weakness. Like, nature. I am all about the nature. Like, what do I believe in? Nature. What do you follow? Nature. How do you make certain decisions or come to certain conclusions? Nature. That is why nature is still here. That is why we are here, able to survive on it, is because survival of the fittest. And I know that's kind of a jump from gardening, and cover crops, but it's the same thing. If you want strong stuff, you gotta let the strong survive, and don't baby the weak stuff. Because if you have a tree that you have to water all the time, and it's always got some aphid infection, and it's always got some weird fungus, it's gonna have that problem the whole time, and you're gonna spend so much time, money, energy trying to fix this tree, when the best thing to do to have a good healthy orchard is just to hack it down, plant a new healthy tree. And that's just me. That is just me, and how I follow nature, man. And in nature, a weak tree does not last. And we as humans, which I get, we are loving, compassionate creatures, and I want to save them all. Like all the weak little chicks and stuff that I hatch out and stuff, like I want to really badly, but it's not good for my flock or for that little bird. Because when I have saved the very sick, or not sick, but the very weak chicks coming out of the egg, they're sick their whole life. They've always got some problem, and I don't want to fuel that, because that's not fair to me, it's not fair to the bird, it's not fair to nature and the flock. And yeah, all right, I'm gonna stop that rant and read some comments, because I got a few. Oh, let's see. Have you ever thought of planting shade cover on bare spots around your growing areas to cool the ground and see if that helps growth in your garden? So that is definitely part of the process. It's kind of hard to see, but I did start with kind of suppressing with a little bit of mulch and cardboard, just so I can kind of control what comes back. But plenty of stuff is coming back, just popping up through the mulch. But it's super hard to see. But over here in the rock mulch, there's lots of green coming up. We do want to promote all the green all over the place. So with a lot of the pathways, I spread a whole bunch of native grass seed. So hopefully over time, this will fill out with more grasses and stuff like that. Because it is true, the further we can cover stuff, whether that's cover crop or mulch or whatever, the cooler the area is, and it definitely does help the garden beds and everything else we're trying to grow. Coverage out here is definitely key. There's no wrong way to do it. There's just lots of different ways to do it, and they're all going to work differently depending on where and why and the goal. So it's definitely like, you know, if you're gonna do anything, like, why do you want to do it? What's the goal? What's the point? You know, what are kind of some of those specific aspects you have to think about? Like, is this going to be dug up at some point? Is this a cover crop? Is this for eating? Is, you know, just all those different things. Because that's what's great about the grasses. I'm really excited once the grasses get going, because that will be my nesting material. I'm trying to move away from straw altogether. So I actually just kind of use hay for nesting and bedding material now. But I don't like using hay because it's supposed to be food for the goats in that kind of sense. So I'm really excited to grow more grasses just all over the place so that I can use that for all my nest boxes. So slowly, carefully, patiently, hopefully we'll get more ground covers and get everything just going more, you know. Slow and steady wins the race, but its patience is key. Nature can do things really fast or really slow or just in its own darn time. And we as humans can help, but we also just kind of have to be patient. You can't be in too much of a hurry. Like, a little bit. You can always be excited, but a little patience. Sorghum does amazingly well. Sorghum and sunflowers were my best cover crops. Both grew from my chicken feed. Heck yes. Brandon, I think, just planted some sorghum, and then once it warms up just a little bit more, I do want to plant some sorghum, but that's definitely the goal. I've planted tons of sunflower seeds, like native ones, that kind of grow along the road up yonder. I had quite a few come up last year, so I'm hoping, because it was really dry last year and I didn't water some of those places, and so I'm hoping I have a nice kind of seed bank of stuff I've thrown everywhere, and I'll start getting more and more, because like sunflowers, I really want to do them because, yeah, for my birds, and because again, I have chickens. What am I going to feed my chickens if the world goes to poop? I need to start growing more of that stuff. So yeah, sorghum, amaranth, oh, what was the other one? The sunflowers. Oh, there was another plant that I can't think of, but lots of millet. Just all the bird seed stuff I want to grow. I want to do bug farms. Anything I can do to feed us and our animals that I can sustain here on the property, it's what I'm going for. It's what I'm going for. Dust Ups is doing random rows of bags of beans. And the biomass, that's why I was wondering. I'm up north in zone 6, so desert growing, I'm up north in zone 6, so desert growing, so I don't have your issues. Okay, sorry. I've been talking a minute. Yeah, definitely. I actually do that pretty often. I go to the store, not like pretty often, but I'll go to the store and buy beans and grow those. Yeah, that's usually what I do for sprouts anyway. But if I have extras, yeah, I'll throw them in the garden. Lentils, I love doing lentils. I'll just chuck those everywhere. And kidney beans. Whenever I want some good kidney beans, I totally go to the store and just buy an organic bag of kidney beans. And that's totally, like, same thing with certain spices, like, what, you can get cumin, celery, dill, anise, some types of anise maybe, but like even spices, you can go buy spices that are the seeds and not ground up, and you can plant those. I mean, to me, wherever you can get and find seeds, like I'm one of those people, if you open up an apple and there's some apple seeds in there, save them. Any seed, like every seed has potential. Not saying it's going to be delicious or exactly what it came out of, but it has potential. And if it has potential, I want to keep it. So even like grocery, like you get a bell pepper, whatever has seeds in it, I save them. Goodness, sorry. My allergies are starting to kick in a little worse. But I had a couple more comments, I think. Ooh, Zigzag planted a bunch of comfrey roots along my fence. I can't wait to get some comfrey. It's something I just want, and I haven't gotten it yet. Just haven't gotten it yet, but I want some for sure. Chaos Gardening, LOL. Are you a lawyer? Is that a term that lawyers use? I'm not sure. I have no idea. Nature's brutal, exactly. And just because it popped in my head reading that, nature does not understand cruelty. We as humans see things as cruelty. And that is why I follow nature. Because we as humans put weird stuff and labels on things, and it just doesn't work out, I guess, in that general sense. Like, nature is nature. Nature eats nature. Eat or be eaten. And not that I want to eat nobody in a general sense, but that is how I see things. You eat or you be eaten. You make it or you don't. Nature. I hate the saying that, survival makes you stronger. Like, it does, but it doesn't. But in the sense of nature, it does. Nature, we as humans, like with what I agree with, we as humans wouldn't be here if nature didn't do what it does. So, yeah. Anyway. Competition is good among plants. It definitely is. That definitely is a good point. It is important to have different forms of competition, and partially because it is survival of the fittest. If things didn't have to fight for survival, it wouldn't have to prove itself fit, quote, quote, or not. So, yes, competition is good. And that is why I don't agree with the way we see it as competition, so to say. To me, there's more an imbalance. If they're competing, it's good. It's not a negative thing exactly, but it also means hey, there might not be enough of something in there, if that makes sense too. It's all a balance, and nature is balanced, but it's constantly imbalanced and balancing. It's in that constant ebb and flow, and we as humans want it to be perfect. We want things perfect all the time. That's not how nature works. That is not nature. Nature does what it wants, when it wants, how it wants, and because, when, where, and why it wants. Nature. Any plans on using electroculture techniques for the plants? So, I dig it, but it's kind of one of those things, because I've had friends do it. We had a friend who did a big old garden and had a bunch of different rods, or not a bunch of different rods, but he had the whole setup. And I mean, it was cool, but I myself didn't see, trying to think of how to word this because I'm not dogging it. I think every practice is valuable and has a place and a time and things. But when it comes to that, that's another thing to keep track of, to work with and work on. That is relying on something else besides kind of the basic natural system to help things grow. I definitely I think it's a super cool practice, but that's not something we're super interested in doing. Maybe tinkering one day, but also there's kind of this cool aspect out here is we have a lot of iron. There's weird magnetic stuff and energy, electricity stuff here anyway. And we actually were joking about it a while ago that we don't want to do the electroculture because we don't want to zap ourselves into another dimension. I know that's super far-fetched in any form of the sense, but we were just joking about it. We live in a really, our particular area, we have some interesting electromagnetic stuff going on. And we've actually wondered if because we are weirdly green within this funny little bubble we're in, so we actually kind of wonder oh, is that why things seem to grow super green here? Is we got some sweet energy vibes coming and growing stuff? But definitely maybe tinker one day, but nothing we're really too intrigued with. John for climb. I posted more about the native seed search for you. Oh, okay. I did read that. I'll have to go up in a minute and check that out. Jojo Nope. How long do you think it will take to make your vision of your property real? It's already happened. For the most part for us, because like I totally dig the question. I totally dig. But for us, like it's been real the whole time, because this is going to be a forever project. It's never going to be done, in the sense of everything's going to be moving forward and changing, and we're going to adapt. And I guess like it was real kind of like in the beginning, because we were doing it, we were starting it. Getting your hands into it is for us what makes it real. So it, in a sense, it's already very real for us, is the first step onto the property. And that's for us. Sometimes it does take everything to be set up and perfect before it's like real to someone. But also we've done this before. This is 10-ish years doing the off-grid thing. We already built up a whole homestead. So maybe I'm a little biased, I guess, in a way, because we've already done this whole process before. This is just us starting over in a new environment and new learning curves. But it's definitely been real since the beginning for us. I do appreciate that question, though. Thank you. First time hearing the term chaos gardening. Wasn't sure if it was copyrighted. Oh, I see. I don't know where the term came from. It's the term that I know. And when it comes to like true chaos gardening, you just take like all your seeds and just Johnny Appleseed them everywhere, just super chaotically. But I like a little bit more organization for that. So like I have a bunch of seeds started, and say I'll put a zucchini in there, and then I'll put some spinach in there, and then I'll put some like dill and fennel. So by the time I go to plant it, it's just gonna be this insane little chaotic thing of plants that I'll plug in to the ground chaotically. Dust ups looks like the Apollo landing on the moon. You know, it's super intriguing with dust ups is the last video, we'd heard him say it before, but in a couple videos ago, he says he gets 12 to 14 inches of rain a year. We also get 12 to 14 inches of rain a year. So rain-wise and moisture-wise, we're on the same level. It's just very different ecosystems. And it's so intriguing how, because like Montana also gets 12 to 14 inches of rain. So it's super intriguing that the amount of rain versus where you are on the planet, completely different scenarios. And that's crazy, like, because I thought that Texas got a lot less rain than we did, and in some places they actually get more. So it's just intriguing, that's all. It's just super intriguing. Plant anise away from food. Anise, hyssop, I can never say that. Hyssop. I know what you're talking about though. I actually do have a bunch of that I'm gonna be planting. Oh, it's kind of hard to see, but back here there's like this little edge. I want to do all of my my trap plants. So I want to do my marigolds, my nasturtiums, my anise. Oh, there's a couple others, but I want to have like, yeah, a nice little hedge of all those plants to attract all the things that annoy us. Do we grow peyote? We are too cold for that. I mean, we could in like a pot maybe, but in the general sense, I just want to grow a cactus that we can like eat for nutrition and not for spiritualness. We do want to do and grow and propagate more types of cactus. You know, the native ones, we find the seeds, and I've propagated some pads from around the area. So, because they're a good food source. I do want to find the ones that don't have any spines on them, just so I don't have to worry about burning them off. Oh, let's see. Sorry, I'm a little behind on my comments. I heard about chaos gardening on David the Good. Dude just mixes a bucket of seeds and tosses that everywhere. Yep, that is the true chaos gardening method. Yep. Wow, your internet is really good out there. That is actually the newest thing in my off-grid life. 10 years of off-grid. And they put some weird cord out yonder on the highway, and I have never had such good service. My whole 10 years of being off-grid, I can actually like answer a video call and be able to have a conversation. It's weird. It's weird to have good service. It doesn't take a million years for things to upload. It's great. Like, you know, like I said, I love technology. It's great. I love technology. Just, I don't like what we do with some of it, right? You live on your land, dust-ups don't, a large part of why you get better results from what I can tell. And I can definitely agree with that. We do live full-time, or we're on our property full-time, and it is a super big help. It's benefit. We get to stay and watch watch and pay attention and do all the observing and stuff. And like, you know, we all have our criticisms of people, but my personal opinion, you know, Dust Ups he has some of the same goals, but his goal overall I think is very different, and partially he doesn't live there, and that's definitely part of what causes that huge difference. But you know, we just have very different everything. I mean, some of the same goals, but very different everything. And just us personally, like he even, like if you watch his very, very first video, he essentially talks about how it's a business for him. The whole Dust Ups and him doing the property, it's more of a business thing versus this is our lifestyle and our livelihood. So like for, you know, with Brandon's channel and our channel, you can't compare. There's no compare and compute because it's two totally different scenarios, even if we're with the same goals type of thing, you know, because like, you know, he's done some nifty ideas, but I would never do a decent chunk of what he's doing, like at all, you know. So it's, to me, you can't compare and compute, you know, because we both get the same amount of rain, which is crazy, like, because I did not realize that. But he has totally different terrain, you know, 300 and some odd acres as well is what he's working with, and we got 10. So like, to me, like, it's definitely like, I love the fact that there's the two, you know, people who watch Sean and watch Brandon and vice versa, and it's really cool to see that kind of crossover. But a lot of people try to compare, and you can't. There's two totally different people doing two very, very, very different things, very different ways. Like, you know, like, you know, both do check dams and terraces and those kinds of things, but they're still implemented and constructed and planned out very different, and you can't compare. Just wanting to throw that out because a lot of people do try to compare, and you can't. Way too different. Apples and oranges, baby. Same amount of water maybe, but apples and oranges. Thanks for all the deets and different needs. Exactly. Different needs are going to lead to different things, different wants, different desires. And everybody, there's this purist thing that is happening or happened or whatever when it comes to off-grid, homestead, da-da-da. Everybody has their own opinions. I dig it. Totally. I love it. I love people's opinions, but don't shove it down my throat and tell me this is how I need to do it. Because we all want to do things our own way. We've all learned from different people or different things, and you know, there's this purist aspect, like, you know, just for example, I ain't dogging nobody, but if you say, oh, well, you're using this, so it negates everything else you're doing. And that is silly. You're talking about purist stuff. You have to be perfect or it doesn't count at all. And I don't want, like, no. Even if you can do just a little bit, I think that's great. I'm one of those people, not that one person can change the world, but one person can start a movement. Even if it's a tiny one. Like, to me, it's like that stupid thing, like, I like to smile. So if I smile at someone and they smile, I'm like, oh my gosh, that made my day, that makes me so happy. That kind of aspect, you know, one little thing can make a difference. And so when it comes to the way everybody does things, everybody's different methods, what they agree or disagree with, we're all gonna do different things, especially off-grid homesteading, greening the desert, growing a food forest. We're all going to do it differently. And it sucks because partially too, we all have different definitions of what things are. Like a food forest, this right here, this whole forest, like all this back here, I consider that a food forest because we can eat the juniper, we can eat the rush peas, we got edible legumes, we have, trying to think of some other edible stuff. We got the, we got the barberry, we got the desert olive, there's a couple different types of onions, there's several different types of flowers. Like, there's lots of edible stuff right there. We don't need to grow a food forest. We have a forest. Like, why, like, aren't most forests food forest? Like, it might not be specific for humans, maybe, but a forest is a food forest. All forests are food for something. But, you know, and we're all going to go about those things a different way. And it's not the wrong way. Like, that's the thing. If you want to do something, great, go ahead, try it out. Doesn't mean we're going to do it because that's how you did it. You know, that kind of goes a lot with like the juniper argument. People don't like the junipers. That's fine. You understand information differently than we do, and we're going to use that information differently than you're going to use your information. Our information says these actually are really important, and that's why we want to slowly replace them, slowly, over time. Because if we chopped all these junipers down and planted different trees, we're still not going to have shade for 30 years. I mean, maybe not 30, but, you know, a tree doesn't grow instantaneously. So, of course, we don't want to hack them all down at once. Maybe some here and there and replace them and keep going until there are less junipers. Some people just want to take them all out. Done. We're over it. Rock on. If that works. I mean, no way is wrong unless you're like purposefully causing damage, I guess, in a sense. You know, like, I can't think of how to describe that anymore. But, you know, if you want to do it one way, let's rock on. I do not disagree. I mean, maybe I disagree, but I'm not going to tell you to not do it because I disagree, if that makes sense. We need to, just because we disagree with something, we need to stop telling people to not do it, unless it's like actually harmful to people and stuff, if that makes sense. And that's what a lot of this property is too, is it's experimenting. It's figuring out what does work, what works better, what works best, what are we never going to do again. And I think those are the most important kind of lessons and things to learn and pay attention to as you develop a homestead as well, or a food forest, or greening your desert, or whatever your goal may be. I'm looking forward to your cat claw fence. I super hope that works out. I super hope. Zigzag. I honestly love the comparison, like you said. He is making the money and doing this. He's making the money doing this, and you go, and I just want to live free. It's a great comparison to see how that affects results. Yeah, and in a general sense, like, I mean, that is kind of some of the things we constrict ourselves with. Like, if you're trying to make money and that's your main goal, you're going to do things totally different than someone where it's their life. It's their livelihood. It's everything. Sorry, I needed to move out of the sun so it doesn't cook my phone. Because even in the winter, the sun is hot and makes my phone overheat. It's so weird. I'm so not used to it. So I think I'll go through a couple more comments, and I've been talking forever. So I'll probably finish up some comments and end the live for today. He has a dozer. If you guys had one, I bet you could do your whole property in a day. Yes, we could, but we wouldn't, because slow and steady wins the race. We spent about a year just kind of carving out where stuff will go, because Brandon wants to observe. He wants to see what happens when it rains and those kinds of things. Because if we were to do all that work super fast and be done, and then a year later find out that we hate it, we can't drive over it, we did stuff where we wanted to build something, we dug things too shallow or way too deep, or it's in the way, you know, just kind of those things. Like, yes, machines are great to get a job done fast, but with how we want to do things, fast is the last thing we want. We want a slow build up. For one, to allow the nature to acclimate to the changes we have made, to make sure we like what has been done, and to make sure it works. Because if you dug a big old swale, oh yeah, this is going to be perfect, big old swale, and it's just terrible, you now have this big old swale that you have to fix. You have to redisturb everything. You have to move more dirt. You have to, and part of it is those machines are super terrible for the ground and stuff. Like our neighbor does allow us, or he comes over with his machine and does work where we need it. But that tractor tears up the holy moly out of the ground. I don't want a tractor driving all over because it's so damaging to the landscape itself. So certain things like that, like yes, like it would be super helpful to have a machine, but the downfalls to the machine outweigh the benefits for us. And in the sense, like if we need a big old hole dug, we'll probably wait for the machine. But until then, we're not, it's not a big deal. We don't mind the heavy lifting. Like in a general sense, we are still young. We still have a little bit of grease in our gears. And hopefully by the time that we don't want to be digging anymore, there's no more to be done. We've allowed this system to build, to situate, and we're done. We just have to tend to the garden now. John, thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. Thank you. And welcome to the family. We're all off-gridder or wanting to be off-grid homesteaders, and I just want to share everything I can about all the things that I can think of, even if it's a little ranty. So I appreciate you joining the live, supporting, and hanging out with me this whole rambly mess. Started out with gardening and just covered everything. Maybe that should just be how these go. I'll just start off with something and we'll see what happens. I kind of like that idea. Go with the nature a little bit more random and chaotic, right? Have you tried growing pumpkins? So I tried a pumpkin last year and I think it just had a bad start and it just didn't do very well. But I did grow a little watermelon and a little cantaloupe, and it's little because I was doing dry farming. Like I'm watering everything as little as possible, like just enough that it's going to make fruit and see what happens. So I did have like a little cantaloupe and a little watermelon, some little squash. Everything was small. Like that's what it seems to be here in Arizona. Everything is small until you water it and it'll get bigger. So that's kind of the cool aspect about even the natives here, that a lot of them like more water, they just don't need it. It's just not necessary. So even with the plants that I've tried to grow, that I've been working and experimenting with growing, that they'll deal with less water, you just don't get as big a fruit. So it's finding the balance between a little less water and maybe planting a couple more plants, something like that. But I do want to try pumpkins again this year. I actually have a couple started inside, so hopefully they get big enough that they'll be a little bit bigger and happier and I'll actually get pumpkins. We'll see. It's still experimenting. Like I know how to grow some stuff. Like I can grow some stuff, but growing stuff outside in Arizona, still learning. I've got a pretty good idea, but I'm still learning. Slow and steady. Yes, put Mother Nature first. That is, and part of that is because we are part of Mother Nature. That is like sure, I'm a tree hugger, but I also agree with logging, just responsible logging, you know? Like I love ranches and agriculture and all that stuff, but we just do too much. It's too much, it's too big. Like hopefully I don't step on any toes, but like one of my biggest things, I guess where I get confused in a way is, I get told to be a vegan a lot because I harvest my own animals for meat. Because it's a cruelty to the animal. But to me, what is cruel to animals is wiping out hundreds and thousands, if not millions of acres of wild land to grow our monoculture, to grow that vegan food. To me, if you want to be vegan, like you need to be like foraging a little bit. Like I don't know how else to say that in a sense. Like if you want to help animals truly, don't drive a car because billions of animals die in a car every year. You better not create any trash because garbage kills animals all the time. Again, it's that purity thing. If you do one thing, you're negating everything. Like if you want to be vegan, that's great, but you do realize all that tofu you eat comes from somewhere that used to be a wild land. Like in a sense, you know. And so that's where I do really struggle sometimes with kind of how we do things and how to deal with people and the lifestyle and all the other stuff. But it's taking care of nature. We are part of nature, and it's nature that feeds us, but we're slowly decimating the diversity of nature. And it's just going to get harder to feed us. It's going to get harder to eat. And that is partially why we do what we do. And why I really want to get into sharing more about gardening is because tinfoil hat, like screwed on real tight for this one, we're going to start going very hungry soon. Maybe not as a planet, but at least as probably a country. That is just my personal opinion. That, and part of that is because our food is icky. It's all processed. It's all junk. And to me, that is us already going hungry in a way. And so I really want to start sharing like growing stuff. And it, like, you know, even if you're not in Arizona and you're somewhere that's wet and delicious and grows all the food, I love that. I'm so jealous. I wish I lived somewhere tropical. But also I want to stay here in the US because I want to hopefully make this a better place in a general sense. You know, I want to get more people back into like the victory garden, grow our own food, self-sustainable crap. You know, I want everybody to get a little crunchy because we're all going to go hungry if we don't, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, it's not a bad thing to be a tree hugger. I just think there's a balance. There is appropriate ways of logging, especially since we stop forest fires. Because we do that, we do need to replace the cleanup. Because like fire is like the cleanup crew. Like that's nature's cleanup crew. Oh, these woods, you know, they need cleaned up a little bit. The fire comes through. But since we stop that, that cleanup crew doesn't happen. So when we do get fires, they're really, really bad. So like, it's the balance. If we throw things off a balance by doing one thing, stopping fires, which is great, I'm not dogging it, we do need to do something on the other side that helps prevent those fires. Because if we don't let the fires happen, when they do happen, they're just worse. So like, it's this balance, you know. We as humans could do so many super cool things. Like, just let me put it this way. If humans weren't such assholes, think about the cool stuff we would have done and how like awesome and abundant this planet could be. I mean, that's just me. That's just how I think. Like we could have some super cool stuff and be not even close to the ridiculousness things are now. But we just have this weird brain train of chaos in a negative way. This is chaotic negative, or negative chaos instead of positive chaos. And let's switch it over to positive chaos, all right? If any of y'all want to cause chaos, positive chaos, all right? Only positive chaos. Anyway, dang, 3 hours and I popped in at 14 minutes. Yeah, I've been kind of rambling today. I've been wanting to talk a lot about lots of stuff when it comes to all the things. So I appreciate all of you who have hung around for so long. I'm super appreciative. It's super awesome. And I do want to get more into this, like just lives, blabbing, talking. And I think each time I might have a topic, like I said, but always a question and answers. Like, I mean, unless it's like something super weird, I'll answer just about anything in a sense of if you're curious about anything homesteady or food preservation or off-grid hygiene or all those things. Like I definitely want to help people at least have a, because like it's my experience, my view, my opinion. And if I say, hey, this and this and this, it doesn't mean you have to. Like, it doesn't mean you even need to consider it, you know? But I just like throwing out ideas and things and bits, and hopefully something will be awesome and work for you or be helpful for you or make you think about things a little different. You know, that's my biggest goal when it comes to any of my videos. But I think with my lives too, like we'll kind of dive into the other stuff. Like I really don't want to get like political too much, but everything is political these days. But like, I want to talk about all the stuff because we all have different reasons for doing what we're doing, off-grid, homesteading, all those different kinds of things. Like, we are like nature. We are diverse and different and beautiful and frustrating and terrifying and destructive. And I want to help everybody do things the way they want to do on their homestead by hopefully giving you ideas and inspiration, essentially. um, Sister, I truly feel for you and Brandon. Hope it's okay. We were worried about America. I'm worried too. Like, I'm not gonna get into things, but like, I mean, I already knew that stuff was insane. Like, in a sense, the stuff that has come out, like, I've had my tinfoil hat on already, so I'm really not surprised. I mean, I'm surprised, but I'm really not that surprised. But to me, it's kind of the responsibility of the people of a country to stay in that country and fix that country a little bit. Like, I'm kind of a dick like that, I guess. Like, if you have problems in your country, you need to stay there and fix it and make it like what you want it to be instead of abandoning it. And so, like, because people have asked me, why didn't you just move away? Because this is my home country. These are my peoples. There are other people just like me who are stuck here too, and I want to be there to support them, I guess. Magic Moons, thank you. Magic Moon, thank you so much. I super appreciate your support. Heck yes. Thank you, thank you. Oh, can I actually heart it? I can. I didn't know I can heart little. Okay, I'm gonna go back. There we go, awesome. Okay, I'm new to the live, so please forgive me. I'm still trying to figure things out. Zigzag, yep, if we wasn't so greedy, we could easily have done public works in the building, just water retention in areas. Oops. In our desert areas wouldn't even have to plant. That alone would help in a decade or two. I think I see what you're seeing. No, it's totally true. Well, and it's not only that, but if we weren't greedy, we just wouldn't have caused a lot of the damage we do because we're greedy. Like, we always want more and to build more, which isn't bad. You know, it's not bad to want to grow and continue. We just decimate things in pursuit of said things and not care, you know? And I think, to me, that's more what it is. We don't care, like, or as a whole, you know? But it's also the fact that, like, there's only so much us little people can do. Like, people want to complain about plastic. I'm not the company wrapping peeled oranges in plastic. You know, I'm not the one packaging all the milk in plastic. You know, it's the system that's got us caught up in the plastic. And so we need to start getting at those companies, being like, companies, no, stop it. Don't do it. We're done. We're done with this. This is not what we want to do. And that is what will change. You can't get mad at just the regular person trying to survive for their plastic. We need to, it's up higher, up, you know, there's that pyramid thing that we always, you know, people at the top pooping on everybody down below. Yeah, we're on the bottom, and we need to like kick off the whole top of the pyramid, just knock it off into the ocean and start over. You know, because plastic wouldn't be a problem if those powers that send billions of dollars everywhere else would just put in a little funding for whatever seaweed, kale, corn, plastic, biodegradable stuff. If we'd, like, I'm pretty sure, like, you put $1 billion into that and actually mean it, we could probably fix the plastic problem like that. So it's not really a problem, it's just lack of people giving a crap. And most of those people are like the rich people who want to keep making money and producing lots of stuff. So it's not even, it's still not us. You know, we can't blame each other for things that we have no control over. That's where I see our world is like, there's half things we can't do anything. And I wish we could do more, like, directly. But start emailing your government peoples and email your scientist peoples and start making some noise. You know, it's kind of the best we can do right now. And making my videos and living off grid and trying to deal and do is my voice, so to say. Wish you guys security tucked away in your pocket. We appreciate that very much, because it is scary, it is worrying, but at the same time, it's more just the whole planet. Like, we're all crazy. We're all crazy. So I send love and security to the planet as a whole. But I appreciate that very much. Is it Dead Al? What altitude? So we are at like 5,200-ish, which I was really grateful for coming from Montana because we were also at about 5,200-ish. So we actually didn't change elevation from Montana to down here, which was nice. No altitude acclimation. And I didn't have to like learn like pressure canning. You have to change the times a little bit. I didn't have to relearn any of that, so I was grateful. Tinfoil hats are the fashion. They are. Mine is usually on. Like, I'm not all tinfoil hat, but I can't help it. It just falls on my head sometimes. Journey with Cindy, I appreciate that so much. Thank you, thank you. I'll definitely see you around town too. I definitely love running into anybody. See, like, I love people, but this world is crazy. That's why we have our own little slice of paradise. But thank you again so much, Cindy. I super appreciate your support. Pyramid thingy. Yeah, just that's how we just like to do pyramids, and just I don't know why. And we definitely do our part, and that's what I think it is. And your part doesn't have to be anything bigger than what you're doing with your space. That is your part. We don't have to be famous to do the little things, I guess. Mushroom leather would be a great plastic replacement. I like the mushroom one, and then there was some kind of seaweed one that looked pretty promising. But we'll see. We'll see. It's development, money, crazy people. Zigzag says, go look at the beach in Brazil. That's our plastic issue. Folks just toss it everywhere without a care in the world. Exactly. And that's part of it. People don't care. Like, just like a random example, we collect well, this was in Montana, but we were collecting recycles to build with. And our friend had a bin specifically for us for the recycles in his household. And he had a roommate stand up, and our friend was like, hey, throw that in the recycle. And he goes, oh, I'm too lazy, and just threw it in the trash can that was right next to the recycle bin. That is the majority of humanity when it comes to trash. And the other issue is it's out of sight, out of mind. Like, we off grid, we have to look at our trash. We watch it pile up, in a sense, and we have to do something about it. Versus if you live in a city, you have these bins that you roll out to the sidewalk, and then this big old machine comes and picks it up and takes it away, and you never have to think about it again. To me, that's a lack of responsibility in a way. It's not really our fault, in a sense, because we can't help but accumulate tons of trash, because everything we do creates garbage, and it's silly. But, you know, that's, to us, it's giving responsibility away for your trash. Like, oh, here's my trash. You guys take care of it. I'll pay you for it. Which I dig it. I'm not dogging. Totally, it's the way the system functions, and it can't, if we didn't do that, the system couldn't function the way it does, right? But, you know, and that's what sucks is, like, and people don't realize how much trash they make. At some point, I want to do a garbage challenge, and you guys will just get the heads up, I guess, because I'm going to talk about it. But I essentially want to challenge people to go into your kitchen, and you might, like, you know, I'm not trying to say you got to buy stuff, but anything that's in plastic, in cardboard, that's wrapped, anything that's like wrapped or packaged, except like soups and cans, like any dry goods. We're talking about dry goods here for the most part. Put it in a Tupperware or a jar, and take all that garbage and put it in a black bag, and then set it to the side. And you want to do this practice right before you have to go on your big grocery shop. Like, you know, at the end of the week, you do the big grocery shop for the next week. Okay, so before you do that, you're going to put all the dry goods in a container. And you're going to go to the grocery store, and you're going to bring all those groceries back. None of those groceries can be put away until they're taken out of their wrapper and put into a Tupperware or a glass jar. And then you put all that garbage into your black bag. That is like all the trash in your kitchen. That is all the trash you would have created over time eating that food. And I did this several times. And when you do that, when you take all the plastic, all the garbage out of your kitchen at one time, it's insane. It is so much garbage. And you wouldn't know it's that much garbage because you're only opening one thing at a time. You know, eat the candy bar, you know, you open the Pop-Tart, you know, you crack open your soda, you know, you're only seeing it bit by bit. But when you take it all out, it's crazy. And I just don't think that helps when it comes to how much garbage is created, is because our system literally makes it so you can't even tell. You know, if you go out to eat, like we're just gonna McDonald's, you know, you throw your garbage away there. You know, sometimes you take your leftovers home, but you throw away your garbage there. You know, you go to work and you grab lunch on to or from, and it's some throwaway packaging. You know, that doesn't come home and go into the garbage all the time. So it's not only the garbage you create at home, but it's all the other garbage you create everywhere else. And it's that invisible garbage almost that you really don't see. Like, one of the waste products that really bugs me is like feminine products. Like, that is so much trash. That is so much plastic. That is so much waste. And I don't think they're very good for us. And that's just my bias. But, you know, I think about diapers. Like, how much waste have diapers created? You know, how much waste does this one thing that we could wash? We could create something that can be washed and reused, but instead it's a disposable system, and I truly feel that's going to be part of our downfall. We want it easy. We want convenience. We don't want to work for it, and it's going to get us in trouble. It's going to get us in trouble. There's more noise about Palestine than, is it Palestine? I'm sorry, I have a terrible tongue tie. I can't, it's not that I can't read, it's that my tongue can't phrase. But yes, you're right. There's more uproar about everything that's dumb and unimportant than what is important, I guess, in that sense. Because to me, this chaos that's going on is not important. What's important is our air is crap, we're running out of clean water, and the birds are eating plastic. Those are what we need to be focusing on right now, to me, because just I'm a big anti-waste, but also big at upcycling and recycling, and we do as a planet. I guess I can't even say that. I am probably sheltered in the US in my own fashions. Like, we're all sheltered in some way in our own countries, but nonetheless, worldwide, we need to get our shit together. Like, we really do, because we're in trouble. My opinion, tinfoil hat. That's why we're here growing food. Because we are way off on what's important right now. Hydrothermal carbonization facilities can reduce plastics to base materials and to be remade into new products. See, and I love those types of things. I really do. Like, the better tech we create, the better we can deal with other problems. But to me, the only issue with certain and almost any recycling process, and it's more just because where we are already, is that if we're causing, like, I guess I'd need to check out that process more to understand it, but let's just go to regular recycling a little bit. You know, how much energy is it taking? What are the refuse materials, you know, the byproducts? You know, because like recycling plastic, that's a ton of transportation, so fuel emissions or vehicle emissions. You have the heat that it takes to melt it down, to clean it, to do whatever, to remold it, and then to reship it out. Like, it's one of those funny things. Like, I love technology, and we're getting there. We're getting there where things create less ick during the process, you know? So I hope that I'll read more up on that process, because it sounds like it's pretty efficient and doesn't create, probably takes some energy, but probably doesn't create as much ickiness and byproduct as other recycles. So hydrothermal carbonization. I'm gonna do some more reading on that. Stop drilling and deal with all the plastic. I can agree. The world needs plastic and oil. Is that how you say it? We build everything now, even your organs. See, it's not that I'm anti-plastic. Plastic is a wonderful material that is obviously extremely versatile, but we create way too much of it for silly reasons. Like, to me, like medical stuff, heck yeah, plastic. You don't want Like there's certain medical stuff, like even heart, like a plastic heart, like you don't have to grow it or find like a donor. I'm down, I dig it. But when you have plastic spoons and plastic forks, like why aren't they metal or wood? You know, like those silly things. Like why are we making plastic cups when it could be glass or porcelain? I'm not saying those are exactly any better or worse, but you know, just everything turned plastic, and plastic ended up being a problem. We need to revert back at least a little bit. We don't have to like totally annihilate plastic because it's useful. Like nobody can deny how awesomely useful plastic is. We just need to go about it a different way and be able to deal with the refuse, with our trash. We need to learn how to appropriately deal with our waste without causing further harm. Maybe that'd be a good way to do it. Like we could make all the plastic in the world the same as we do now, but if we don't find a good thing to do with it after it's used, then it's more of a problem than it is useful. I guess that's how I see it. Plastic brains. Yep, plastic brains, plastic lips, plastic booties. We're all plastic. See, we just went too far. We'll take a good thing and take it way too far. Bamboo chopsticks. Yes, I love bamboo chopsticks. Yep. And see, and that's the thing too, you know, if we're all a little more crafty. Oh, you need a spoon? You just carve one out real quick. Bam. Spoon. Organic spoon. Let's see. I was pointing out we literally can't not have plastics and oil. Now even synthetic clothes are made out of it. Yep, and see, and again, it's not that I disagree. We just took too much too far. We got lots of people on this planet. There's a lot of people, you know. And when you look at biology, you know, one of the first lessons I remember learning that really sunk in biology was there's like this little island in the book. You know, you open the book and there's this little picture of an island and there's 2 bunnies on it. And this little chapter goes on to say, oh, you have this many bunnies, you know, you got 2 bunnies on this island. Well, these bunnies have babies, and then those babies have, you know, and it continues. And then it talked about why and how that island would collapse, and all those bunnies would pass, not all of them, but a lot of them would pass away because nature goes, oh, there's too many of you. And there's not enough food, and there's not enough water, and you pooped and peed everywhere, so now there's disease. And now you have problems, and they're gonna die off, and then the island can recuperate and regrow, and then, you know, hopefully a predator comes in to help keep the bunny population at bay so that the island doesn't collapse again. And when I read that, like, I hope that made sense, but, you know, too many bunnies, island collapses, it comes back with a predator to deal with the bunnies, so the island doesn't collapse again. And I was like, what, fourth grade maybe? And I was like, wow, that island is like planet Earth. And I thought, wow, I think we have too many people because it sounds like what the bunnies went through is what we're going through. Like we got too many people and we're all pooping everywhere and digging stuff up and tearing it all up. And a lot of problems we have now, if there just weren't so many people, you know, like, or we found a bigger planet, I guess, but I don't want us to bring our BS to another planet though either. I don't think that's helpful. But that's super kind of off topic in a way. But are we gonna do meat bunnies? I really want to do meat bunnies, but I don't know if I want to do meat bunnies. Like there's tons of really good reasons to have meat bunnies, but none of them are good enough that I would do meat bunnies. I don't know, because I love bunnies. So like part of it's just because I want pet bunnies. I mean, they'd still be meat rabbits, but yeah, I don't know. I think for a while now, I just want to stick with birds. Like partially because I'm a crazy bird lady, definitely. But it's also because I would like to, like if I were to do meat rabbits, I want enough growing on the property that I don't have to buy them anything. So maybe one day when we're situated, but not until then, I suppose. Yep, we did. We got lazy and cheap. Yep. See, and I'd love to go back with like, yeah, glass bottles that are reused and recycled. Like that's just, oh, that'd be so much easier, but there's just too many people for that. And like you said, we're lazy. Other planets are too far from us, which I'm happy. But at the same time, we're trying to colonize Mars. Why are we trying to colonize a dead planet when our planet right here is alive? Let's just let's just keep this one alive. Alrighty, well, I have been yapping forever, and I'm super grateful for everyone for hanging out as long as you did. I super appreciate it. Probably talk, well, maybe I'll throw a poll, see if you want more gardening, or we'll talk about goats, or you just hear me ramble on forever. But yeah, I super appreciate you guys. John, a 67-year-old ecologist, peace and climate activist. Ooh. I'll just say you've got it and you're doing it right, and I thank you. Well, I thank you too very much. I super appreciate your guys' support, and I'm super excited to continue. I don't know if they'll all be this long. This one was a little bit long, but it was really fun to sit here and chit chat with you all, and we'll definitely do it more often. And you can either like comment on this one or comment somewhere about questions or like topics that you might want me to like blab about, and I will sit here and blab as much as I know or think about it to you, and you can take what you want and throw away the rest. And I appreciate you all hanging out in the rock garden. Happy homesteading and experimenting and working with nature. I'm all about the nature, baby. Peace out, you guys.